in Barnet. They suffered stab wounds in the attack and are now being looked after in hospital.
We need to make sure that when people carry out these activities, they feel the full force of the law. People think they can get away with this. The person who firebombed a few weeks ago is out on bail. That's not full force of the law.
This crisis, it's a crisis for all of us. It's not enough to simply say we stand with Jewish communities. Of course we do, but we must show it and act it. And the responsibility lies with each and every one of us, because it is our fight too.
Let's stop importing people from countries where anti-Semitism is the norm. And if our London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, in his infinite wisdom and belief in diversity, thinks that's the sort of diverse view that it's OK to have on the streets of London and the police don't get involved, don't be shocked, and don't you bloody dare claim to be shocked or upset or care about Jewish people being stabbed on the streets of our capital city in broad daylight. This is on you.
You keep getting proven right every single time. Jews are not safe in this country.
Well, absolutely. No one can be surprised or feeling shocked that this happened. No Jew certainly is. I mean, we had Zach Balansky last week saying this was just a perceived threat. Well, we can see this isn't any perception. This is real. This is happening on the streets. This isn't just an anti-Semitic terror attack. This is an attack on Britain, on the Western liberal democracy and values.
The first politician that uses the word shocking, I might just go and throttle him, because this is anything but shocking. It's the most expected thing is almost overdue, if you ask me, because, I mean, I just left Israel last week. I thought it would be the last time we were woken up by explosions, but clearly not.
The Jewish community is our community, and their safety is our safety, and we have
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
One or two things to talk about. I mean, we were expecting a quiet Saturday morning. Talk about the weather, it's picked up a bit, that would be nice. I thought we could do a phone-in. You know, what is your favourite sandwich filling? Mine would be chicken and sweet corn with a touch of mayonnaise. No such luck, because we have a Prime Minister on the brink. I'm Mark Dolan. Welcome to Talk Breakfast. Happy Saturday, one and all. Your weekend starts here, and breaking this morning, it's our understanding that the Prime Minister is now considering his position. He's speaking to his family, friends and trusted colleagues. So will we see the PM's official resignation in the days or even hours ahead? Well, I'm looking after Talk Breakfast today, tomorrow and Monday, so it's very possible that Starmer will resign whilst I'm on air. Whatever happens, we're going to bring you full reaction. Meanwhile, the newly elected Labour MP for Makerfield, Andy Burnham, prepares for power. So who will be in his cabinet? What will his policies on the economy be? What's he going to do about net zero and the highest energy prices in the developed world? And what's he going to do about immigration? Will Prime Minister Andy Burnham stop the boats? Well, his journey to number 10 appears unstoppable, and will bring reaction from across the political spectrum to this extraordinary political earthquake. We will likely see a new Prime Minister in post as early as next month. So my question to you this morning is a simple one, a big one, and an important one. Should we give Burnham a chance? 03444991000. I'll be dealing with Andy Burnham in no uncertain terms in a special Dolan's Dispatch at 9 a.m. There's no love lost between myself and the incoming Prime Minister. It's my view he's a preening narcissist, a careerist, a man that will tell any audience what they want to hear. But will he be better than Starmer? Should we give Andy Burnham a chance? Are you in a mood to give him a chance? Will you give him the benefit of the doubt? Or are you done with this Labour government in its entirety? My phone number is 0344 499 1000. I'm delighted to say that Rory is taking your calls today. He's spruced up the studio beautifully. It's looking very sharp in here. If you want to see the studio and you want to watch what is now a television programme, head over to YouTube, search Talking Up We Pop. Nehar is directing our TV output, which is very, very exciting. I'm delighted to say Dean Spencer, the boss, the Don, the godfather of Talk, is our executive producer. He's got a packed show for us today, and pressing the buttons, yes, indeed, the governor, Dave the engineer. Now, if you're new to the show, let me tell you that there is a hideous tug of love going on at the moment between myself and our sister station, Talk Sport. Got to tell you, it's turned nasty. The issue we have, Dave is our engineer. He presses the buttons. He's the guy that makes me sound this good. I'm very lucky. A lot of people think it's talent and the mellifluous tones of my natural voice. It's not. I'm actually not this good. It's Dave the engineer. He is the broadcasting equivalent of auto-tune. And TalkSport, understandably, as the #1 sports station in the world, they want a piece of Dave. Of course they do. Everyone wants a piece of Dave the engineer, because I'm not even this good. This is how magical the guy is. So there's a hideous tug of love, and I'm going to be having showdown talks with senior members of the TalkSport team, including Adrian Durham, Ray Parlour and Jeff Stelling after the World Cup. We're going to sit down. We're having face-to-face showdown talks over drinks. We're going to the George in London Bridge. Denny's running a tab. And we're going to straighten it out. But let me tell you that whenever I get into a fight, I always win. I will prevail. So enjoy the magic of Dave the engineer, of Nehar, of Rory, of Dean, and of yours truly. It's a big show to come. This is Talk, so let's talk. It's a hideous, hideous tug of love that's going on between myself and TalkSport, and it's produced tension because sometimes I go into the TalkSport kitchen and I'll see Goldstein or I'll see Cundy, you know, and it's awkward. It is awkward. And the thing about Goldstein and Cundy and Alan Brazil and all these lads is that they know that when Dolan's in for the fight, there can only be one outcome, and that I will win. Front page of the Daily Mail. Resign in days or face a coup. Keir Starmer was last night warned he faces a coup within days unless he steps aside for Andy Burnham. I'm going to share a theory with you. I don't think Keir Starmer is that bright. I think he's thick. I think he's quite a thick man, actually. And I would put any listener or viewer of this show, of Talk Breakfast, in number 10, and they would do a better job. The vast majority of you would do an incredible job. And I know that because I read your texts and I listen to your calls and I hear the voice notes. And what you have, all of you, is life experience, a gut instinct and common sense, plus the work ethic. Because this platform and this show is all about Alarm Clock Britain, people that put more in than they take out. Even if you're retired or you've got a medical situation where you can't work, that doesn't matter. You're of the mentality of someone that gives rather than takes. This is not the channel or the show for the work shy or shirkers. And I would put almost all of you in charge over Keir Starmer. I don't think he's very bright. This is the bloke who is basically, he's the broken clock that isn't even right twice a day. He's on the wrong side of every argument. And now he's going to be stopped being Prime Minister. And I suspect, I fear that he may try to cling on, which would be further evidence of the guy's lack of brain power, of his lack of common sense, of his brass neck. I think he's incompetent. I think he's dishonest. He's duplicitous. He's slippery. I just think he always defaults to a lie. Whenever he's under pressure, he'll just think, what's the right answer? I better lie. I'll make it up. He is remarkably inauthentic. And don't take my word for it, because insiders at Number 10 told the Sunday Times newspaper that Keir Starmer is not liked within the Number 10 operation, and that one person, one of the SPADs, the special advisors, said he's the least curious person they've ever met. Do you know the other really surprising thing about Starmer is that his brand was, OK, I'm not exciting like Boris Johnson, but I'm an excellent administrator. I will pore over the detail. I'll go through those red boxes and I will be a perfectionist. I'll be a nerd. I'll be spreadsheet Starmer. That hasn't happened either. He's not even a good manager. He's not a technocrat. Rishi Sunak, do you remember pint-sized Rishi Sunak, who's tiny? Do you have any idea how small Rishi Sunak is? He's absolutely tiny. He was a prime minister in miniature. And I was a fan of his, actually, back in the day. I know the Tories are terrible. Don't get me wrong. Net zero. Open borders, the Boris wave and the boats. Wokery in our public institutions. In my view, the COVID overreaction. No one talks about COVID. Well, I talked about COVID in this very studio throughout the pandemic, and I said, please don't lock down, because it's a nasty virus, but it's mild for most people. Let the healthy people go to work. Let them go to the gym. Let them go to the pub. Let's keep the economy going. Well, I was ignored, sadly. I wasn't Prime Minister, which is a crying shame. And as a result, what have we got? 1.6 trillion quid's worth of national debt. A waiting list of, on the NHS, 7 million people, a tsunami of mental health issues. The COVID response was a disaster. It was a catastrophic mistake. Anyhow, that aside, the issue we've got with this Prime Minister is that, you know, someone like Rishi Sunak, he came in and you know, the Tories were terrible, but when he became Prime Minister, he crunched the numbers. He did 16-hour days, fuelled by his love of Coca-Cola, not even Diet Coke, but the full fat. And what Rishi Sunak did is he's like, right, what do we need to do about inflation? What do we need to do about the debt? What do we need to do about growth? And he was a money man. Rishi Sunak is a multimillionaire. He's an accomplished guy. He knows about the economy. He knows about business and commerce and the city and the stocks. He knows about debt. He knows about profit and loss. He's a numbers guy. He's a dweeb. He's a nerd. And he was a really good nerd, because inflation was about 11.5%, 12% when he became Prime Minister. Do you want to know the rate of inflation when he ceased to be Prime Minister? 2%, which is quite literally the Bank of England's target. You wouldn't want less than 2%, because then you've got effectively a depression or stagflation. No, that's not right. Stagflation is low growth, high inflation. But you don't want the inflation to drop below 2% because it's an unproductive economy. You need a little bit of heat in the economy, and about 2% is perfect, which is what we had. We had the highest growth in the G7. And I went to a party about maybe 6 months to a year after Labour had won that election. And I met a guy that was in the construction industry, a regular guy, the builder, a bit of roofing, just a man that works with his hands. But like I've said about the audience of this show, common sense, life experience, a gut instinct, a brain. All right. He has an actual brain, a head on his shoulders. And this guy said the Tories were not great. He said, but if Rishi Sunak was still Prime Minister, we'd be flying. That's what you said. Now, I will agree with critics of the Tories that if Rishi Sunak was still Prime Minister, I think the boats would keep coming. We would still have a degree of net zero madness, etc., etc. So I think it's good that they're gone. But the economy would certainly be in better shape. We would have growth of probably 2.5%. We'd have low inflation. We wouldn't have the return of unemployment. But we are where we are. So now, old Starmer... So Starmer wasn't charismatic, but he wasn't even a good technocrat. He's not even managerial. This guy couldn't run a bath. So he's always wrong, and here we go again now as he locks himself in Downing Street, like sort of his bunker. And he doesn't want to go because he's very stubborn. You see, the truth is that Keir Starmer didn't become Prime Minister because he wants to do stuff. He became Prime Minister because he wanted that job title. He's just an ambitious guy. It was power for power's sake, very much like Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson, when he was a child, wanted to be world king. That's what his sister Rachel revealed, that when Boris was a little boy, I want to be world king. I'm Boris Johnson. Rah! And I want to be world king. And that's what happened, right? Well, it was the same, really, for Starmer. Starmer just wanted to be I want to be Prime Minister. And we know that there was no conviction, no ideology underpinning that. The proof of the fact that Starmer just wanted the job and nothing else is that when he got the job, he had no plan. And he's been horribly found out. By the way, Andy Burnham is going to be horribly found out too. I interviewed Nigel Paul Farage. Now, are you familiar with Nigel Paul Farage? He is a significant political figure on the right of British politics, let me tell you. He's a very debonair chap, and I spent half a day with Nigel Farage last week. That's correct. Your host spent half a day in the exclusive company of one Nigel Paul Farage, who I suspect will be our next Prime Minister after Andy Burnham, and then Ed Miliband will have a go, and then that phone thief, allegedly Louise Haigh, she'll probably be Prime Minister for 10 minutes, and Lisa Nandy, who went very woke. Not happened to Lisa. I used to be a fan. Anyhow, eventually, I suspect Nigel Farage will be Prime Minister. Can we not have this panic about reform and about Makerfield? Let me assure you, old Nigel Paul Farage, he's not going anywhere. It's not unlike my battle with Talk Sport, which I'm going to win. Because everyone wants a piece of Dave, and understandably so. But everyone wants a piece of Farage. Well, he will be our Prime Minister, don't worry about that. But he's got a few hoops to jump through first, and we've got to tolerate 3 years of more socialism, simply with a better presentational package. It's going to be Andy Burnham, right? Starmer in a sharper suit. May God help us. So we are where we are. Starmer won't leave. But eventually, whether he resigns, which would be the dignified thing to do, or whether he turfs it out and has a humiliating leadership contest, he won't win that, and Burnham is coming. So my question to you is a very simple one this morning. Should we give Burnham a chance? Are you in the mood to give big Andy Burnham a chance? Coming up, one of the finest broadcasters in the land, plus more front pages. This is Talk Breakfast.
We've got some
What they're ashamed of is the English flag. Scottish flag, fine. Welsh flag, fine. Irish, everything like that's marvellous. But no. We can't be English. And this has been going on for a long, long time.
He would be Prime Minister of the most toxic political brand in the country at the moment, which is Labour, and that is what we will be battling against.
Our Prime Minister is allegedly attacked by another nation and nothing is said.
This is a reminder that Russia regards the United Kingdom as a hostile power.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. Should we give Andy Burnham a chance? Bill has messaged the show. Good morning, Bill. Happy Saturday. I hope you're having a good morning so far. Good morning, Mark. I'll give Burnham a chance if he does the following. Close our borders, send all the illegal immigrants back, build up our armed forces, cancel the court cases against soldiers, and finally get people off of benefits and out to work. That should be on day one. Only problem, says Bill, no chance it will happen. Bill, that is one of the nicest, most beautiful manifestos I've ever seen. So good, I'm going to read it again. This is what Bill wants from our next Prime Minister. I will give Burnham a chance if he closes our borders, sends the illegal immigrants back, builds our armed forces, cancels the court cases against soldiers, and finally gets people off benefits and out to work. Bill, you are a genius, because with that set of policies, you have fixed some of the most fundamental issues facing the country. Getting people off benefits and back to work, that will sort out the debt and economic growth. Build up our armed forces, that's good, because that means our country can't be stolen by some dictator and we all die. Send illegal immigrants back, well, that's good, because they've broken the law and are a net cost to the economy and also provide a threat to our safety. Close the borders. I mean, seriously, Bill, bravo. Cliff says, good morning, Mark. I think Burnham is taking the Labour members for granted. If there's a leadership contest, the members may not back him. If there's a coronation, then would he really have legitimacy? Rachel, good morning, Mark. No! Says Rachel. No! We shouldn't give Burnham a chance. I really don't understand people who seem to think things are going to be better under him. He's in this for himself, not us. By the way, I love your energy, Mark. Rachel, thank you for that. It's not natural energy. It's Lucozade Sport. Live in the studio, someone that is naturally bubbling over with life is the wonderful Emma Webb, broadcaster at the New Culture Forum. Good morning.
Good morning, Mark. Happy to be here.
So good to have you. Front pages, Daily Mail, resign in days or face a coup, Prime Minister is told. The Guardian, Starmer exit inevitable after Burnham victory. The Sun newspaper, 6 years after Megxit, Meg's in, Harry and wife to stay in palace. Daily Mirror, by-election victory, up for the fight. Burnham sets up leadership battle, PM won't back down. What a mess, say the Daily Express. Lame duck PM vows to fight on as Burnham calls for new path for Britain. And the Times, Starmer urged to stand aside. Well, the Prime Minister, we are told this weekend, Emma, is considering his position. What do you think he should do?
Well, wouldn't we all love it if he just resigned? I mean, it's going to happen eventually, but I think it was going to be much, much worse to have Prime Minister Andy Burnham. So in terms of the interest of the country, and I know that there are many people who would just like to see the back of Keir Starmer, and I think actually that's why we've seen him getting such a huge share of the vote in Makerfield, is because people just want to, you know, let Keir Starmer know what they think of him. The reality is that Andy Burnham would be a terrible Prime Minister. He will be terrible for the country. And so actually, in a sense, the longer that Keir Starmer can delay resigning and give Andy Burnham a chance to sort of lose the energy of his campaign, to let a little bit of the sparkle wear off, you know, that might be, you know, to the benefit of if there is a leadership contest. But of course, Andy Burnham is looking to it sounds as if he's looking to give Wes Streeting a senior appointment in the cabinet to avoid a leadership race. Who else could feasibly challenge Andy Burnham. Andy Burnham will probably win if he runs anyway. So maybe we should just rip the plaster off and Keir Starmer should just do the honourable thing and fall on his sword.
And I'm on the air on Talk Breakfast today, tomorrow and Monday. It is possible that the Prime Minister will fall on his sword. Stranger things have happened.
Well, how many times have we thought that he was about to? I mean, I can't even think of all of the examples of the times when we thought surely Keir Starmer must resign now, whether it was the local elections, whether it was the whole Mandelson saga. That's difficult to say, that's a tongue twister. You know, I think we all hope that Keir Starmer will resign as soon as possible because we would like to, we would like to see the country improved. And as the guy who messaged in has said, who wouldn't vote for either Bill or anybody who did all of those things? I mean, I think most of us would vote even for a Labour leader if they were willing to do those things. But that isn't what Andy Burnham is all about. I mean, he's talking about spending even more money on things like, firstly, public control of water and energy, a land value tax, national care service. I mean, how much would that cost? A programme of mass social house building. But he's also pledged to stick to the fiscal rules, to not raise income tax, national insurance and VAT. He's going to have exactly the same problems as the current Labour government have. The only difference is that he's much further to the left, and it will be so much worse if he appoints Ed Miliband as his Chancellor. So we've thought so many times that Keir Starmer was going to resign. I think the writing probably is on the wall. Apparently, he's privately saying that he's going to consider this over the weekend and get back to us. He's got a big meeting planned with Andy Burnham next week. What are the chances of him resigning next week? I feel like I've said that so many times, I don't want to make another false prediction.
Well, I think he has to resign because the only reason you would enter that fight and threaten your legacy and embarrass yourself is if there was a chance you could win. And there has to be 0% chance that he wins a contest against Burnham.
It would be wildly embarrassing for him, and it's inevitable that he would lose. I mean, the Parliamentary Labour Party seems to be dead set against him. I mean, there's a list of people in today's papers who have apparently had these conversations with him, including Heidi, the Transport Secretary. Yvette Cooper, the Foreign Secretary, has apparently pressed him to lay out a timeline for his departure. The Chief Whip has conveyed the feelings of the backbench MPs. They also want him to go. Nobody is on Keir Starmer's side, not the country, not the Labour Party, and not the Parliamentary Labour Party either. So the chances of him actually, I mean, I don't think it would even necessarily be that, it'd be embarrassing for him to be defeated. I think he would be monumentally defeated. And this is a man who surely must be concerned about his legacy. That's not the way that any Prime Minister wants to go.
You've nailed it. And if I was Keir Starmer and I'm thinking about the optics of it and how history judges me, then I would want to own this. I would look at it because The Art of War by Sun Tzu says, don't enter a battle that you can't win. It makes no sense. So therefore, and I think that's where Starmer is, it's impossible for him to win. And therefore, I think that he can own this and look like a decent man and say, well, look, I don't want to go. I had a mandate. We've got the breakfast clubs. I didn't join the war in Iran. I've been great. I'll see you later.
But the thing is, he didn't have a mandate. The Labour Party had something of a mandate. It was with a historically low vote share. So I don't know what kind of mandate that really is. Most people in the country didn't vote for them. But we don't have a presidential system like the US. We didn't vote. The country didn't vote for. I presume you didn't. We personally didn't vote for Keir Starmer, but the country, the country didn't, vote for Keir Starmer. The party is what the country voted in, and if he were to do the honourable thing, not that he has at any point previously, but if he were to do the honourable thing and to say, look, I recognise, the people of Makerfield have made their voice heard. Clearly, I have gone well past my best by date, and so now is the time for me to recognise the will of the people, to behave like a democrat, and to just step down.
Yes, and I think that he can
possibly apologise.
Well, he probably should have apologised for everything. I'm not a fan of Sir Keir Starmer. That's well reported, but I think that if he were to resign, I think there would be a degree of public sympathy, thinking, oh, God, you know, he's had a torrid 2 years. He did win an election with a landslide. He was the front and centre of that campaign, which was successful, notwithstanding, as you've said, I mean, the popular vote was horrible. 9.5 million people voted Labour, as compared to 11.5 million voted for Corbyn in 2017. So it, weirdly enough, wasn't a very successful election, but thanks to parliamentary arithmetic and first past the post, he became PM. And he will stand down. So we shall see how bloody-minded he is, and we'll see whether he's got any common sense or not. If he's got half a brain cell, he'll step down. But we shall see. Someone that hasn't even got one brain cell is Carol Vorderman. Find out why she has made my blood boil next. This is Talk Breakfast, 6:30 a.m.
Across the UK on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart...
You're Talk Breakfast 32, live in the studio. Emma Trimble, broadcaster and star of the New Culture Forum, which is a fantastic political resource for journalism, interviews, monologues and much besides. Speaking of monologues, the old countdown superstar herself, Carol Vorderman, has been celebrating Andy Burnham's victory in Makerfield. Here's a clip from her Instagram feed. And by the way, if you're of a sensitive disposition, look away now.
I'm so happy, Andy Burnham wins resoundingly by about 55% of the vote. Isn't that fantastic? So you can add everyone else together and he still won. So no matter what the political journalists bang on about splitting the far-right vote and all of this kind of thing, Andy Burnham still won.
Several things to pick up there. So Nigel Farage is far-right, apparently. What are Nigel Farage's policies? He wants to police the border. So every country has a border and then you decide who comes in and who doesn't. It's called a border. It's actually the geographical and political definition of a country. A border is not an idea, it's not some far-right theory or ideology. It is the boundary of your country. And he's like, why don't we police that boundary? He probably wants to bring taxes down so we can have national income, which pays for welfare, doctors, schools, and fixing potholes. He wants to scrap the net zero target. He's not against solar panels as such or wind and a mix of energy, but he doesn't see the point in this target given the fact that China are burning fossil fuels for fun. But according to Carol Vorderman, that is far right. That's the first thing to say. Second thing to say is this woman's track record on politics and political judgment is a disaster, because she is the same person that campaigned for Keir Starmer to be Prime Minister, campaigned for a Labour victory in July 2024, and then when it all went horribly wrong, and Labour went after the pensioners and the farmers, and when they destroyed economic growth, when they brought back unemployment and inflation, suddenly Carol's like, I'm so sad and I'm so sorry that I've encouraged all of you to vote Labour. Floods of tears. She was a broken woman. Even her bum shrank slightly. That's how upset she was. And by the way, I'm going to talk about her bum because she was Rear of the Year in 1988. So she's weaponised her backside in the past. I'll do it now. This Labour government's terrible and I'm really sorry for encouraging all of you to vote for him. I'm Carol Vorderman from Countdown and my numbers don't add up. And now, apparently, Andy Burnham is the answer. Do me a favour, Carol. Go back to Countdown because your career is on a countdown to the end. I mean, seriously, I'm actually struggling on this one, Emma. I really am. Because Carol...
I'm struggling to hold it together.
Well, she's like... There were so many celebrities that wanted a Labour government, including, by the way, a good friend of mine, Tom Kerridge. Are you familiar with him?
Yes, yeah.
Famous TV chef, lovely man, a real gent. And he's like, do you know something? It's time for change. This isn't working. Vote Labour. Minutes after that election victory, we had the national insurance tax raid. We had hospitality being clobbered, red tape, minimum wage. Anyway, Kerridge has got buyer's regret. Sacha Lord, the brilliant Northern hospitality guru, furious with this Labour government, even though he backed them originally. They all regret their recommendation. And now Carol says that old Andy Burnham's the answer. I mean...
Well, you know,
help me out.
I wonder if it's because they've got something of a proper job. You know, they're connected to an industry, and the hospitality industry and business, nothing is going to make you become a conservative, and I mean small c conservative, economically conservative, not wanting to be, you know, taxed to death. Nothing is going to make you go that way more than what this government is doing to those people in this country that create wealth. And those people who are just trying to get by, are just trying to run their businesses, to get on in their industries. What is Carol Vorderman? I mean, I also wish she'd just stuck to numbers, but she's become a kind of activist. And I think it was Carol Vorderman as well who, did she ask Robert Kenyon, the Reform candidate, to apologise for the comments that he'd previously made about women?
Yeah.
I think she did. She's become an activist. And unlike those people that you mentioned, you know, she hasn't had the common sense to have buyer's remorse. She's leaning into it even further. I mean, again, as I say, I think there are a lot of people who have voted for Andy Burnham because they want to just protest against Keir Starmer. But in the same way as many people voted for Labour because they were angry at the Conservatives, all we're doing is pushing the government further and further to the left and actually entrenching the problems that have led us here in the first place. So for someone like Carol Vorderman, I mean, you joked saying, you know, our borders far right. I think Carol Vorderman and her ilk probably do think that having borders and not just letting in anybody who wants to come here is a far right position. She probably does think that. There are people on the left who do.
Yes, because that's the extent to which they've lost the plot. And what bothers me about the likes of Carol Vorderman, she's entitled to her view, of course, but I consider her influence to be dangerous. And the reason I say that is because she has a big platform and she propounds these very fashionable luxury beliefs that make her look like a good person, which are very virtuous, which are very harmful to the people of the United Kingdom, policies the consequences of which she is insulated from because she's a multi-millionaire that doesn't live next door to an HMO or a migrant hotel.
I was recently walking through a very affluent part of North London, and in the windows of all of the houses were various sort of political posters, the old Black Lives Matter posters, all of those causes. And as you say, they are luxury beliefs. They are beliefs that can be held by people, particularly open borders, can be held by people who, you know, live in their nice gated communities and their now nice houses separated from everyone else. These aren't people who are going to be living in council accommodation next to a migrant who's no longer being housed in a hotel or on an army base, which is what this government want to do. You know, they're not bearing the brunt of the consequences of this. They're certainly not bearing the brunt of the consequences of this economically. They are completely insulated from the ways that this is affecting the British public. They like to think that they're virtuous, but actually they're not not having any empathy with the British people. Instead, they're actually being quite paternalistic. They think that they know what's right, and then not willing to listen to the lived experiences of those who are bearing the brunt of it.
Most definitely, and the likes of Carol Vorderman and Gary Lineker and Gary Neville and all of the other millionaire Garys, they don't experience, for example, what the people of Crowborough are going through at the moment, which is a sleepy East Sussex town, not far from the seaside, and there is a cadet centre there, which is a wonderful municipal resource in which young people, boys and girls, teenagers, youngsters, they go and do their sort of recreational military training, do their exercises. Wonderful thing, and especially in the fact that kids and young people spend so much time glued to their smartphone or gaming, it's wonderful that they have that resource. Well, that resource in Crowborough has been taken away from them. It's been shut down and appropriated for the use of and the accommodation of 500 undocumented men. And it's a small town, and life has changed overnight for those people. So, for example, the women of that town, they don't stagger home on their own, drunk from the pub at 10:30 in the evening on their own, because there is a property with 500 men, who are, by the way, free to wander around the corner. They are driving their kids to school now, whereas they used to cycle or walk, and there is terrible traffic as a result of that. Life has changed overnight for these people. The Garys, the millionaire Garys, and Carol Vorderman don't get that, they don't see that, they don't experience that.
That is the case up and down the country. And if there were, Channel 4 does these sorts of documentaries where they sent, there was one where they sent people like Bushra Sheikh off to, do the migrant route and that kind of thing. Wouldn't it be great to send someone like Carol Vorderman and the Garys to go and stay in one of these areas, to go and experience what it's like, as they did in those shows where, people slept rough for a night. Let them go, let them experience what it's like. Let Carol Vorderman attempt to walk at night in an area where you have all of these undocumented men roaming around and see what happens.
These people disgust me. They really do. The millionaire Garys, the Carol Vordermans, the woke virtue signallers, they are obscene, and the reason why is because they just care about their ego, the narcissism, aren't I a lovely person, their public profile, and the policies that they are supporting are genuinely harming the country and the people of this country and folk listening to and watching this show, and it makes me really, really angry. It's the same with the economy. The policies like the national insurance tax rate is causing businesses to shut down, is causing them to not recruit people anymore. The red tape, the minimum wage, this is meaning that we now have the highest youth unemployment in the whole of Europe. So these policies are hurting people. They're damaging policies, and the sort of progressive left-wing elites are cheerleading the whole thing.
Yeah, it's a perfect storm. And the people who are cheerleading it are betraying the country, and they're betraying the people of this country, particularly those who are cheering for open borders, who don't really want to deal with the illegal boats who are coming across the channel, who have no sympathy for the people who are having to deal with that. These things come with a cost. Mass migration is costing us. Even when you look at particularly isolated numbers, you look at the number of, how much is this costing us to house these people? How much is it costing us to feed them? And, all of these different numbers, they all add up. Mass migration and also illegal migration is costing this country an absolute fortune. The British taxpayer is being bled dry, and companies are getting to the point where they can't actually employ young people because the government is continuously taxing us in order to foot the bill that we are paying to house and feed and support people who have no right to be here.
Some of whom, potentially a small percentage, but some of whom are dangerous.
Well, people who, when I say who have no right to be here, I don't even necessarily mean asylum seekers. I mean the whole world does not have a right to come to the United Kingdom. And if you come here, even as a legal migrant, and continue to live off of the state and receive benefits as soon as you arrive, this is a person that shouldn't be in the country. We should only be welcoming in people who, and a small number of people who are, actively contributing to this country, who are bringing something, to the table, who are not a net drain. But that's not the situation.
No, and for me, the millionaire Garys and Carol Vorderman, they support policies which hurt the poorest most. So they all support net zero, which is really bad news for poor people because it increases the cost of energy, which is felt most keenly by poor people, including pensioners. They support red tape, minimum wage, the national insurance tax rate, which causes businesses to lay people off, and that's people at the bottom end of the economic ladder. The minimum wage hike, that affects young people at the bottom of the ladder who can't even get a job now in their local pub pulling pints because the pubs are struggling. But what bothers me briefly, Emma, is that somehow a perception has been allowed to develop that the millionaire Garys and Carol Vorderman are the good people, right? And we're the bad people, the people that want a firm border, law and order on the streets, that want national income so you can give it to poor people. We're bad and they're good. Make it make sense.
I think there was a time where that was the case, but I think that time is starting to wane away. There was a period where, people of that ideological persuasion had sort of seized the means of cultural production, and so they could project this image that they are virtuous and so on. But I actually think that now we have so much independent media as well that people are able to assert their voice more clearly. And that we actually, you mentioned net zero, we saw this in Aberdeen with the Conservatives winning from the SNP. That was the vote of industry. It's not just about the fact that energy costs increasing affect poor people the most. It's also that it affects the sorts of companies that would employ blue-collar workers, industries, including oil and gas, but also, factories. Any company that uses a large amount of energy, your white van man, your plumber, the people who are having to, use petrol in order to do their job.
Well, it's a fascinating conversation. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. Now, Andy Burnham has won the Makerfield by-election. Is this the beginning of the end for Reform UK? That's next.
We've actually put up with half a century of being told that somehow our national flag is a symbol of oppression. Now, I think if Oxford should do this, they'll find themselves completely and utterly defied. People will literally justify this. And you know what? If people have moved to this country and they don't like our flag, I've got a really simple idea. Go back to where you came from.
Do you ever feel about being arrested because of the socks you wear, Nigel Farage?
Well, I do. You want to see the underpants? Oh, dear, no.
There's the wow.
Across the UK. On DA across the UK. On DAB+. YouTube. On YouTube.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast, 6:49. And, of course, Andy Burnham is the winner of the Makerfield by-election. Emma Trimble, broadcaster and star of the New Culture Forum. Burnham's the winner. Was Nigel Farage and the Reform Project the loser?
Objectively, yes. Or, as in Reform, but not the project of Reform, I think. So this is a seat that obviously Reform would hope to win in because it's a sort of Brexity area. They did very well during the local elections in that area. If Reform is going to beat Labour in a general election, this is the sort of demographic, the sort of constituency, unlike Gorton and Denton, which had this kind of sort of cultural split. This is the kind of demographic that you would think that Reform would do very well in. But I think what we've seen here, so firstly, they've obviously, you know, I think Nigel Farage said that they hoped that they would get around 18,000 votes. They got 16,000. They still, the difference between the vote that Reform got and the Labour vote was still more than Restore took from Reform. So it wasn't a case of just straightforward splitting of the vote. Andy Burnham would have won even if you added up together all of the quote right-wing votes that were cast in that election. But I think what we're seeing here is, as I said earlier, it's people who are voting to try and get Keir Starmer out. I think we've probably seen some strategic voting that you know has meant that some people who might have voted for Reform, perhaps in a general election, have voted for Labour here just because they want to get Keir Starmer out. I mean, and you might say, well, that doesn't make any sense because Andy Burnham will be worse than Keir Starmer, but I don't think, you know, you can count on, you know, that necessarily being people's reasoning. I think people just really wanted to punish Keir Starmer as they wanted to punish the Conservatives at the previous election. So Reform did increase their vote share by 2,000. It's obvious, it's obvious, I think, that you know, Reform would have wanted to have done better, but I don't think that this is as bad as some people are saying. I think there was a Conservative source that said, you know, Keir Starmer should resign over this or something to that effect. I don't think, that Nigel Farage should resign. I don't think that this is such a monumental failure that it is a sign that there's anything wrong with the Reform project or that Reform couldn't win the next general election.
Let's take a listen to the leader of Reform UK responding to the loss in Makerfield.
What really happened here is it was vote Burnham, get Starmer out, which of course was our campaign message leading up to the locals on the 7th of May. So we were slightly hoist with our own petard.
Well, there you are. Can you tell me what strikes you in terms of Nigel's demeanour and mood there? Naturally, he's exhausted because he's been up into the early hours waiting for the result. He's also one of the busiest men in politics anyway. But does he strike you as someone that's on the ropes a little bit at the moment?
No, I actually, and you know, maybe this is a bias in me because I obviously like Nigel very much. But I think that what we're seeing with Reform and with Reform's leadership there, you know, he said we've been hoisted by our own petard, that they have been, you know, campaigning in the local elections to get Keir Starmer out. And then in this election, that line actually benefited Andy Burnham. I think what we're seeing is something that is unusual, actually, with politicians, particularly with the Labour Party. They've very much had their head in the sand. There's been so much denial amongst Keir Starmer and his supporters about, you know, how the degree to which he can hold on to power. And you know, whether we've seen people saying, oh, there isn't a leadership election. I don't know what you're talking about. What we're seeing here with Nigel is actually that, you know, he's taking accountability for the loss and really sincerely thinking about why that has happened. And that's what you would want from a party that is serious about representing the will of the British public and about winning the next general election and ultimately about saving the country. So I think his seriousness and perhaps looking a bit forlorn and disappointed in the result is actually the kind of authenticity that, and I hate that term because authenticity actually sounds quite inauthentic, it's the kind of authenticity I think that the British public want to see from their politicians. It's honesty, isn't it?
It is, and he is a very honest man. And what he's done is put his hands up there and said, look, I was expecting 18,000 votes. We got about 15,500, 16,000, and I'm disappointed. And this is a different way of doing politics, isn't it?
Yeah, and to be clear, as well, it is disappointing for Reform. I mean, they've seriously undershot where they were predicted to be. The polls weren't particularly accurate. And it is a problem for them because whilst I'm saying that, you know, this is part of this boost for Andy Burnham is probably the protest vote against Keir Starmer, we don't necessarily know that for sure. And what people will be thinking when they look at this result is, can this map onto the rest of the country? Could Andy Burnham beat a reform campaign in the next general election? And so Reform will obviously be taking that very seriously. But YouGov has done some polling for the Times that found actually that voters have doubts about an Andy Burnham premiership, and 79% said that they knew nothing or little about Andy Burnham. So when we're thinking about how this result maps onto the rest of the country, I think Reform will be looking at stats like that and considering, you know, all the possible angles as to whether or not this is something that we could see repeated at the next general election, particularly in constituencies that are demographically similar to Makerfield.
Most definitely. I think that Andy Burnham will struggle when he becomes Prime Minister, given the economic backdrop, plus what's happening geopolitically. I think he'll be found out within days. And I think Nigel Farage will have a massive opportunity at the next general election. Completely agree with you, Emma, on that one. We have some really shocking news, which is a train driver has died and 89 people have been injured after 2 trains collided in the Bedford area as police declare a major incident. 11 people suffered very serious injuries, 22 were seriously injured, and a further 56 have major injuries, according to the East of England Ambulance Service. Let's get a response now from the legendary travel correspondent, Simon Calder. Good morning, Simon.
Good morning. I'm speaking to you from London St Pancras International, the station which was the destination for the 3:50 train from Nottingham yesterday afternoon and the 4:40 train from Corby, which very sadly collided just south of Bedford. What we know is that the late-running train from Nottingham came to a halt a couple of miles south of Bedford for reasons which are not entirely clear yet. The investigators are very much on the site, but then the train from Corby, which had called at Bedford and was heading for Luton Airport Parkway and then for here at St Pancras, very sadly struck the back of the train. We know because the rail unions last night, as left the Train Drivers Union and the RMT Union, put out statements saying how deeply saddened they were that the train driver of the Luton Airport Express train, as it was badged, had very sadly died. We've got a statement from Will Rogers, who is the managing director for East Midlands Railway. Both of their trains were involved, and he said overnight, we're deeply saddened to confirm that this incident has resulted in the fatality of an EMR driver and a number of injuries to passengers on board. Our thoughts are with the family and loved ones of our colleague who has died, and with all of those affected by this tragic event. Now, of course, this caused massive disruption on a Friday evening, tens of thousands of people trying to use that line. Actually, for the weekend, the line was going to be closed anyway for engineering work. So people travelling from Sheffield, Nottingham, Derby, south to London will, in any event, have been taking alternative routes. But a desperate tragedy and something which, even though it is extremely rare, will have caused immense harm to so many people.
Well, Simon, as you know, as a legendary travel writer, that rail travel is among the safest ways to get around.
Oh, very much so. It's on a par with aviation, incredibly safe. I mean, there have been calls for perhaps to stop people standing up on trains, to have seatbelts on trains. But that, I think, is most unlikely to happen because the safety record for trains in the UK is really well ahead of the rest of Europe, the rest of the world. And that's why we will have investigators doing everything they can to find out how this accident, which simply should not have happened. You should not have 2 trains on the same track in such proximity. They will be working on that and identifying ways to make rail travel even safer.
Simon, I've only got a couple of seconds. I mean, are there any lines of inquiry? Is there any possibility of human error? Might it have just been a technological glitch? Do we know anything about that?
Look, at this stage, I'm so sorry. It is pure speculation.
No one knows.
And our thoughts are with the family and friends of the driver who so sadly died.
Well, Simon, it's always a pleasure to see you. I wish today it was under happier circumstances. Thank you very much for making the time to tell us about this appalling, devastating tragedy which has seen a driver lose his life, 89 others injured. Truly, truly tragic. More to come. This is Talk Breakfast.
I've got some breaking news here. The Crowborough Army Training Camp could hold male asylum seekers all the way until 2030.
Goodness.
After the Home Office claimed it would only be for 12 months. Not much ambition involved in that, is there, in terms of solving the migrant crisis?
Absolutely, and the way that the Labour government gaslit the public when the migrants were first moved in there, saying, you know, you guys are absolutely being mad. Crowborough is a quiet, leafy town in East Sussex. These people, you can see, have been pushed to their absolute limit. They're not the types that you usually see protesting about this sort of thing. But that town has been absolutely desecrated.
You're ruining the country. Get Keir Starmer out. Look, England flag. You're useless. Labour Party's useless.
I love our country. And one of the things about our country is good manners. Not very British.
What Labour advisor thought she wasn't going to be heckled at a petrol station in Leeds? Do these politicians actually ever get out and understand what it's like for real working class people? I thought it was British to exercise a right to free speech. That's what Keith Stalin told Trump. That's what White Van Man was exercising yesterday to Richard III. Oh yes, I remember. We're not really allowed our right to free speech in case we criticise the government.
You can't blame people so many decades away from you for the chaos that has been caused by Labour.
This is cheap politics, isn't it, Syrian?
Well, it's stupid politics. I mean, who raised national insurance on part-time workers? Labour. Who's been the stupid people that have wandered down the road and increased taxes on businesses and on individuals? Labour.
A lot of people get very frustrated, especially when the government says, oh, free school meals, you know, for every kid, not just the kids who really need them, free bus passes, free this, free that. None of it's free. It's subsidised and paid for by the taxpayer. And we're in this constant situation where the government's answer to everything is tax us a bit more, take more of our money, and then give some of it away generously. It's our sodding money they're giving away.
Yeah, exactly. And it's either someone else's money today, another taxpayer, or even worse.
Across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Three minutes past 7. Top of the morning, happy Saturday, one and all. Mark Dolan, Talk Breakfast. And breaking this morning, it's our understanding the Prime Minister is now considering his position. Sir Keir Starmer is speaking to his family, friends and trusted colleagues. Will we see the PM's official resignation in the days or even hours ahead? Meanwhile, the newly elected Labour MP for Makerfield, Andy Burnham, prepares for power. But who will be in his cabinet? What will his policies be on the economy, on net zero, on immigration? Will Andy Burnham stop the boats? Well, his journey to number 10 appears unstoppable and will bring reaction to this extraordinary political earthquake that will likely see a new Prime Minister in post as early as next month. So my question to you this morning is a very simple one. Should we give Andy Burnham a chance? 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Leave us a voice note, and as the saying goes, let's talk. The brilliant Rory is taking your calls today. Should we give Burnham a chance, or are you done with this entire Labour government? Let me know. 0344 499 1000. Pressing the buttons this morning, the legendary engineer, the lead engineer here at Talk, Dave, the brilliant Dave Rhodes. We've got our executive producer, the one and only Dean Spencer. Who had a nice little holiday a couple of weeks ago. He still looks good, and the teeth are growing out. Just back from Turkey. He glows in the dark, this man. And the fabulous Neha, who's the only grown-up in the room, is directing our TV output. So if you want to watch the show and see all the action, then head over to YouTube, search Talking Up We Pop. Let's talk. And let's do so in the company of two very good friends of mine. We have the broadcaster and journalist at the New Culture Forum, Emma Trimble. Good morning, Emma.
Good morning, Mark.
And retired Scotland Yard Detective Chief Inspector Mike Neville. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Mark. Good morning.
Folks, we probably disagree with the politics of this Labour government, but Mike Neville, Andy Burnham is a human being. He'd like to be successful as Prime Minister. Should we give him a chance?
I don't think we've got much option not to, but what Andy Burnham strikes me is he's everything that's wrong with politics in this country. This is a man who joined the Labour Party at 15, who joins political parties at 15, who then went to Cambridge and studied what else but politics, philosophy and economics, the PPE. Then he becomes an advisor for Tessa Joel, a senior Labour minister. Then he gets a safe seat. This is a man who's never had a proper job. He's a facade. It's just everything that's wrong with politics. I think the one thing we need to ban is anybody who's been not engaging. You've got to be engaged in proper work for 10 years before you become an MP. He's a northern fraudster, I would describe him as.
Well, I think that's exactly right. And I'm very confused because this is a guy that was very much part of Tony Blair's moderate, centrist dad, New Labour project back in the day, Mike. Then he was a Gordon Brown supporter who was further to the left. Then he loved Jeremy Corbyn. It's not clear what this man actually thinks or believes.
I think he believes in being in power. He believes in being an MP, and he wants to be the Prime Minister. And the trouble with that is we've seen that with Starmer. I think Starmer wanted to be the Prime Minister, but he didn't really know what to do once he got there. I suppose it's a similar situation with Boris Johnson. These people don't seem to have any real beliefs. They don't bring anything forward. They're just there to be in power. And this is a really awful thing for the country. This professional political class needs to be cleared out like Hercules cleared out the Augean stables.
Well, I think you're very right about that. And the problem you've got is stakeholders, Mike, isn't it? Because if Andy Burnham becomes Prime Minister, he will do so off the back of votes from left-wing backbenchers, the membership, which is to the left of most of the country, and the trade unions. So when Burnham gets in, Mike, they will expect their pound of flesh.
Yeah, I imagine that after having several pounds of flesh, actually, and this is going to be bad for the country. The economics is already a complete mess. This is a man who believes in currently believes in 70s-style nationalisation, this dream that the railways will somehow get better if the government runs them. I mean, having worked in the police for many, many years, I know what the public sector's like. It's awful sometimes, utterly useless. So if anybody thinks the railway is going to get better, then come in my time machine to the 1970s and suffer the British Rail buffet, and then you'll know.
Well, that's right. And Emma Trimble, Andy Burnham does believe in one thing, which is public ownership, as Mike has just suggested there. Even if it were a good idea, it's extraordinarily costly, and any potential advantage and benefit won't feed through for about another 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, by and large, you know, when the government does anything, it does it less efficiently, and then the service actually is not as good. So I think with things like water, you can understand why you might want to have some public ownership of water. But I mean, like I said earlier, the National Care Service, this sort of stuff is going to cost a lot of money, and who is going to pay for it? Because we're already being taxed up to our eyeballs. We've already had this story recently about defence and how the Treasury were unwilling to give the funding that was necessary to the army in order to defend us. Spending money on all of these sorts of luxuries at a time when we can't even fund our own defence is just nonsense.
Well, I think that's a really important point, isn't it, Mike? And what do you think Andy Burnham will do on defence? Because it's been a pressure point for the Prime Minister, arguably the straw that broke the camel's back with the resignation of John Healey, the Defence Secretary. Do you think at least Andy Burnham will tackle that issue?
I don't know, because it depends who the Chancellor is, because it seems to be Rachel Reeves calling the shots with the defence money. It's almost like Keir Starmer went cap in hand, and he asked all ministers to try and shave a little bit back and not spend as much. Well, I mean, who asked the Labour minister not to spend their budget? They're going to spend that and 10 times more. So it depends who he puts as Chancellor, but I see no evidence that Burnham will think that defence of this nation is a priority. This man is a globalist. He's admitted that. He's an internationalist. He's almost a communist. So he will not be concerned with the defence of this nature, of this nation. And you see that people like Rachel Reeves, who say, oh, the armed forces is very misogynistic, it's too many men and all this sort of stuff.
Ridiculous.
And so they're ideologically opposed to the whole thing. So it's going to be a really difficult time, but I just cannot see any improvement on that.
I mean, that's nonsense, isn't it, Mike? Because there are some fantastic women in the military, but for the most part, it's a man's job.
Well, it's just, that's nature, isn't it? My wife is a nurse, and 95% of NHS nurses are women. I've got no problems with that at all. Most primary school teachers are women. Men and women are very different, and we bring absolutely different skills to the table, and there's nothing wrong with acknowledging that, I think.
Most definitely, I totally agree with that. Emma, what about Ed Miliband? Because he seems to be something of a kingmaker under these circumstances. We're hearing, Emma, that he's the one going to the Prime Minister saying, OK, you need to outline a timetable for your departure. He's also the guy, Emma, in the running to be Chancellor of the Exchequer under Prime Minister Burnham.
Yeah, I find this very worrying, because Ed Miliband is an ideologue, and he's relentlessly pursuing net zero. And if we had an issue with the Treasury being willing to hand over money to defence under Rachel Reeves, how much worse would that be under Chancellor Ed Miliband, who will be wanting to funnel huge amounts of taxpayer money into net zero? We were talking earlier about luxury beliefs. All of these things are luxuries. My colleague Rafe Hadel-Mankoo tweeted yesterday saying that we really are very short on time to turn this situation around, to save this country. We've maybe got 1 or 2 generations, given the sort of the way in which younger people tend to vote for left-wing policies. And Winston Marshall also tweeted saying, realistically, we've only got 1 election cycle. We need to sort this out now, because these are existential problems. And if we don't fund our defence, if we, as some people have warned, end up going to war with Russia in some way within the next 3 years, we're in an increasingly turbulent geopolitical situation. The world is not the world of the post-Cold War peace dividend, as people refer to it. We seriously need to get our act together, and having Ed Miliband in such a prominent position as Chancellor of the Exchequer, holding the purse strings, I think would be a disaster for this country. And in fact, I just think Andy Burnham in general, and whatever choices he makes about how he fills his cabinet, will be a disaster for this country. So whoever it is that wins the next general election, whether it's Reform, whether by some miracle it's the Conservatives, we need to sort it out now. We need to get control of our borders, and we need to stop spending money on silly pet projects like net zero when there are much bigger, scarier things to worry about.
What about this from Peter in Shropshire? Good morning, Mark, and hello, Emma and Mike. Starmer became Prime Minister because the Tories were rubbish. If Burnham becomes Prime Minister, it will be because because Starmer is rubbish. What a state we are in. Michael, is there a possibility that we're underestimating Andy Burnham here and that he's actually a very pragmatic, smart operator who's going to pretend to be left-wing to get the top job and then do the right things for the country, such as support Shabana Mahmood in controlling immigration, diluting net zero, potentially stopping the boats, lowering taxes so we can have growth? Is it possible that what he's doing here is rather clever and could be quite good?
I don't think so. It's not what he said. It's not what he said he's done. You know, his wife's involved in the net zero stuff and got a massive contract up in Manchester. His words on nationalisation, all these things I think will come to pass. I don't think he's pragmatic. I think he wants that top job. He wants to put in these very left-wing policies, and this is what we're going to get. I mean, my real concern, Mark, having seen the election results, is, you know, the phrase "the left never sleep." Look at the votes of the Lib Dems and the Greens, how low they were. These are people who are prepared ruthlessly to tactically vote and get in a Labour candidate or whoever they deem the right left-wing choice. And then you look at the fracture on the right. Somehow people have got to get together and sort this out for the good of the nation. As Emma said, we've got sort of one election left. And this petty infighting and squabbling in the right, when you've got the left who are ruthless, determined, as I say, never sleep. To fight them, you've got to use their tactics.
Well, I'm delighted to say that Mike Neville and Emma Trimble are going to stay with us because I've got two big stories for you coming up. First of all, is the Farage project in trouble? Is this the beginning of the end for Reform UK's hopes of becoming the next government of this country? Even rumours circulating that Nigel Farage is considering resigning as leader of the party. We're going to discuss that. Plus, homes of multiple occupancy coming to a town near you. Well, I've got a shocking twist, folks, and I shall reveal all next. 7:16, this is Talk Breakfast.
What they're ashamed of is the English flag. Scottish flag, fine. Welsh flag, fine. Irish, everything like that's marvellous. But no. We can't be English. And this has been going on for a long, long time.
He would be Prime Minister of the most toxic political brand in the country at the moment, which is Labour. And that is what we will be battling against.
Our Prime Minister is allegedly attacked by another nation and nothing is said.
This is a reminder that Russia regards the United Kingdom as a hostile power.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan with you until 10 a.m. Dolan's Dispatch at 9 o'clock. I'll be dealing with Andy Burnham in no uncertain terms. Live in the studio, broadcaster and star of the New Culture Forum, Emma Trimble, and retired Scotland Yard Detective Chief Inspector Mike Neville. And let me start with you, Emma, on this one. Reform UK, They lost the Makerfield by-election. Is this the beginning of the end of the project? Has the halo slipped for Nigel Farage?
I don't think so, and I think it would be, to these rumours that he might resign because they've lost not only this by-election but also the one in Gorton and Denton. I just think that would be ridiculous. I mean, in Gorton and Denton they lost to sectarian voting, and obviously what we're seeing now across our politics is the rise of these insurgent parties. Even the Conservatives winning this by-election in Aberdeen. In Scotland, the Tories are an insurgent party because the SNP have had such a chokehold on Scottish politics for such a long time. You know, people are voting to protest against the establishment. So I think what we saw in Makerfield was people voting for Andy Burnham because they wanted to, you know, make their voices heard and send a message to Keir Starmer. So I think we've seen a bump for Andy Burnham, even above and beyond what the polling suggested, because people feel so strongly about Keir Starmer and they wanted to get him out in the short term. But if you look at the broader picture, Reform won a lot of seats in that area during the local elections. Now, people might say, OK, well, that means that the locals don't translate into actual seats. But actually, I think what it suggests is maybe actually a general election. Maybe people would vote for Reform because they would prefer a Reform government to a Labour government. I think it's very difficult to tell because the dynamics of our politics are becoming increasingly complicated. And under those circumstances, I don't think it would make any sense for Reform to view this as such a hit that their project is, you know, doomed to fail and that therefore Nigel Farage should resign.
Michael, some have taken the view that Nigel Farage didn't get the tone right in the aftermath of Henry Novak's murder. 2 lost by-elections that they might have hoped to win. It's not been a vintage year for Reform UK so far, has it?
It is not, but can you imagine going back 10 years and saying to somebody, right, there's going to be a by-election in England and the second and third place will not be one of the mainstream parties? I don't think people would ever believe it. That's the, as the Emma has said about the change in politics, how it's so, you just can't judge what's happening anymore. So the fact that Reform and Restore came second and third really gives us an indicator of the massive sea change in the last decade. And I think Reform, as they did in the local council elections, this is something where they could do very well. And if you look at this vote for Andy Burnham, you really had 2 parties. One, you had the Andy Burnham as a candidate saying, if you vote for me, I'll get rid of Starmer. And with Reform, you had a vote saying, oh, we'll get rid of Starmer. Andy Burnham had the lucky fortune that he could get rid of him quicker. And that may be why people voted for Labour in this situation.
Any sense at all, Michael, in which Nigel has lost the Midas touch, lost what the Americans call the big mo momentum?
No, I don't think so. I think we've got to look at different elections. Mistakes will be made. Reform is a very new party. How it deals with candidates, how it deals with elections. These mistakes are going to be made along the way. You know, people say, "Oh, look at these councillors who've been, resigned because they've said this and that on social media." There's always going to be errors when you start off a massive project, and you have to quickly get it right. So I think the momentum is still there with Reform. The people I speak to, what people want is a change. They're sick and tired of the Tories having 2 or 3 goals, followed by Labour messing it up. The Tories have 2 or 3 goals, mess it up, Labour have a go. This sort of dichotomy of politics, which we've had for a century, has brought us to this awful broken Britain that we're in at the moment. It needs to change.
Well, let me tell you that my brilliant executive producer, Dean Spencer, has unearthed an extraordinary story, and I'm going to draw your attention to it right now. Channel migrants could be given homes alongside social housing tenants under plans being considered by council chiefs. Another 10,000 asylum seekers are said to be moved into houses, flats and bedsits in London, the southern counties and Wales. Hundreds could be given beds in properties which are being shared with local authorities for social housing. Meanwhile, it now turns out that the cost of accommodating illegal immigrants in, for example, disused army barracks is more expensive, not less, than migrant hotels. Emma Trimble, what a hot mess.
we really shouldn't have to put up with this. It's already so dangerous having these undocumented men in army bases, in hotels, free to wander around towns en masse. But then to house them in social housing accommodation alongside people, you know, having to live again, it's the working class, it's the people who are, and I don't mean this in any offensive way at all, at the bottom of society, the people who are as far removed from people like Carol Vorderman and Gary Neville as you can get,
the millionaire Garys,
who are the ones that are having to bear the brunt of this, and it is simply not fair. Maybe Carol Vorderman and Lily Allen and the Garys can put these people up in their houses for a change. Why should people be, you know, in a situation where, you know, social housing, they can't just simply up and move somewhere else, and they're having to live next to people that they don't know who they are. You know, children might be living there.
They will be.
This is just simply not safe. And, you know, we're talking about the realignment in our politics and how things are changing. I think, you know, just going back to reform briefly, the fact that, you know, Reform may have lost that election in Makerfield, but the reality is the Conservatives lost their deposit. And I think people hold the Conservatives responsible for a lot of this. And this is the reason why we are seeing this realignment in our politics and these insurgent parties, is because Britain is starting to fragment. It's starting to fragment along sectarian lines. Multiculturalism is turning into kind of multiculturalism 2.0, which is repeatedly threatening civil disorder. This is exactly the sort of thing when people say, oh, you mustn't criticise this, you mustn't say that, because it will inflame tensions. This inflames tensions.
It is, and when you talk about multiculturalism, what's happened, it's become rather sort of mutated, if you like, Emma and Mike, because multiculturalism, which is a failed socialist idea, it's the idea that when you come to the country, you don't have to integrate. That's what multiculturalism is. It's the relinquishing of the national sort of flag and the values of the country. But it's gone beyond that now, because multiculturalism is actually destroying British culture altogether. So it's a brand new, hellish monoculture. And Mike, the problem you got with these HMOs, homes of multiple occupancy, and now migrants in social housing, these are undocumented men accommodated in the hearts of our communities.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was bad enough when they're in a hotel. At least they were sort of in a place where you could find them. You know, the police would know that this particular place, they could go there. Now they're going to be spread all over the place. No one knows where they are. They can just simply disappear. You've got unscrupulous landlords who'll make a fortune. But I have to say, having stayed in some of these army camps myself, Mark, the idea that it costs £16 more than staying in a hotel it sums up how the government can be conned out of money. Absolutely scandalous.
Well, I took a voice note last weekend, Emma and Mike, and it was from a brilliant chap who was about, I think, 9 hours into a 12-hour shift. It was the 6th day of the week that he was working. Now, he doesn't want sympathy, this listener to the show. It wasn't a pity party or a sorrow story, but he was just saying, look, it's going to be a 12-hour shift, 6th day in a row, because I'm trying to pay the bills. The problem you've got, Emma, is that the taxes that my listener pays on his 12-hour shifts won't even touch the sides when it comes to the cost of illegal immigration.
Yeah, it's so unfair. Even when we're just talking about, you know, housing people in social housing, that is housing that should be going to British people. The waiting lists for social housing across the country are extremely long. Families waiting a long time.
It runs into the millions.
And people are just coming here illegally, and we hand them absolutely everything. And the taxpayer is expected to foot the bill. People who are working harder and harder, you know, trying to meet changes in the cost of living and being taxed to death whilst working so hard. I mean, the injustice of it is so obvious. And you also, I mean, you mentioned the fact that, you know, we don't know where these people are. We know that people are coming across the channel, and you know, maybe it's not all of them, but we certainly know that there is a criminal industry, that people do come here, they work illegally for delivery companies, If people are in social housing, we don't know what these people are doing. They could be, you know, making plenty of money, able to support themselves. We've been given asylum accommodation to people who are coming from perfectly safe countries. I'm talking about places like the United States, Norway, but we are obliged to provide them with accommodation if they claim asylum, even if it turns out that their asylum claim is bogus. So we are being absolutely rinsed, and it's completely unfair that people who are working so hard, who, as you say, are working 9 hours, 6 days a week, that those people are, you know, being asked to foot the bill for this. It is just plainly unjust, and we're always being, you know, told to, you know, think about asylum and migration in terms of social justice and you know, the ethics of it. It is unethical, it is wrong, it is morally wrong to ask the British people to put up with this endlessly when they have explicitly said, and we do still live in a democracy, that they do not want it.
Michael, is there a danger that we demonise illegal immigrants? Could you take the view that the vast majority of these lads just want to have a better life and are actually very keen on working and contributing to the community?
Well, I think we just can't afford these people. I mean, my view is when I'm told that people are fleeing war, well, I was a soldier at 16 years old, and I would never expect to run off and leave my mother or wife behind, or daughter. So I view them in a very cowardly way, really, that they should not be here if there is a war in their country. I just think they're young men who take a great... You cannot blame them, in a sense, for taking an opportunity. If somebody said to me, you can take your family to Mars and you'll get free accommodation, free top schooling, free healthcare, why wouldn't I go to Mars? And so you can't blame them. What I do blame is the politicians who lie to us, who come up with all this nonsense about fleeing war. And what you get particularly on the left is that they have no will to stop this. In fact, they actually desire it. They want this multicultural experiment, and they're determined by whatever means and however much misery it inflicts on, particularly on the working class people, they're determined to have it. And they then shut people down by saying, if you discuss it or don't like it, then you're racist. So it's a very wicked thing that they have done, and they need to be held to account. But as I say, this government have no will whatsoever to stop this. They actually want it to carry on.
Emma Trimble, you would like to see Nigel Farage in number 10. You would like a Reform UK government in order to scrap net zero, lower taxes so we can have national income which pays for schools, hospitals and doctors. You would like to have border control. You would like to see the boats stopped. That's your dream. Is your dream impossible now that the right is so divided?
It worries me that the right can't seem to unite in order to save our country, because for me this isn't party political. This isn't necessarily, you know, about Reform becoming the next government, although obviously I think that, you know, Reform are our best chance of being able to save the country. This is about pulling it back from the brink, about getting out of this death spiral, about doing all of those things that you just mentioned there, Mark, especially stopping the boats. You know, we are in a serious crisis and something needs to be done now. Otherwise, England, Britain, as we know it, is effectively over. I mean, that's how serious this is. And so we need a government that is willing to do that. It's not just about Reform winning the next general election. It's about the British people seeing results. Because if we did have, you know, whether it was a Reform government or any other government, in the next general election, gets into office and doesn't deal with any of these problems, then faith in our democracy is already at an all-time low. My fear is that if the next government don't deal with this and deal with it quickly, people will entirely lose faith in democracy, and our democracy could be irreparably damaged by the repeated failure over literally decades of successive governments of either party to implement the will of the electorate. That's what a democracy is supposed to do. And people feel that, you know, you pull on all of these levers, nothing ever seems to change. We need to see that change, and we need to see it quickly. And if it's a Reform government that can do that, then it's a Reform government that we need, and the right needs to unite behind that.
Now, Michael, I think it's your view that the reason why Reform might be the answer for the UK is you think the establishment are responsible for the big problems facing this country, and you include Labour, the Lib Dems and the Tories in that. The question I've got for you is given the parliamentary arithmetic, is a political revolution impossible for Reform UK without some support from the Tories?
I think it is possibly that you need the support of the Tories, but you could play your cards probably right here, because there are some Tories whose policies and beliefs are very much like reform. Where we need to be rid of these people are these Lib Dems in disguise.
Right.
They need to be flushed out. These Ramonas and the like, the Gawks and all these awful individuals that have come forward. Let's get rid of them. There can be some deal made, even if it's like with Restore, they seem to be strong in East Anglia. The Tories are sort of a good offering in Scotland, where people, there's a sort of, they're anti-reform, but they're for the Tories if they're against the SNP. There needs to be some pragmatic and common sense approach here. If you look at the Second World War, we didn't agree with Stalin, but we had to deal with Stalin to crush the Nazis. And sometimes you have to work together for the common good.
So what do you think that might look like, Mike? Do you think in the run-up to the next election, if the polls suggest that Nigel can't win a majority in the House of Commons, do you think a pre-election deal, or do you just think you sort things out after the election in a hung parliament?
I think so, things beforehand, because as we saw in Makerfield, the way that the Lib Dems and the Greens will just not vote for their own party because they want a left-wing candidate. They're utterly ruthless. And the first past the post system shows it's no good keep coming second. And that's what will happen with reform. They'll keep coming second, and second is no good. They need to sort it out before the event. Now, afterwards, if there's deals to be done, then that's again pragmatism. But before the event, there needs to be real planning. Fail to plan, and you plan to fail, and that's what will happen.
Well, that's
and
a
it's
great
the
line.
nation who will suffer.
Emma, does that wash with you potentially some sort of pre-election agreement between the Conservatives, Reform and potentially Restore?
I think we need to be strategic. We've seen this with independent candidates as well, coordinated independent candidates in the locals too.
And the left are going to do it.
And the left also. But, I mean, they are conscious of the fact they need to be strategic, and therefore they stand down candidates in certain areas in order to ensure that one of the most favourable candidates that they back has a better chance of winning. I think that's what we need to see. We need to see parties on the right standing down candidates, as in the case of, like standing down, if Restore had actually gotten enough of the vote to stop Reform from winning that by-election, I mean, that would have been a very good case for the Conservatives and Restore to stand down in an area where it was clear that the best chance of winning was for Reform. And likewise, in other constituencies, if the Conservatives have a better chance of winning, then maybe Reform should stand down. But the problem is, and the thing that concerns me, and I'm seeing this myself, particularly on social media, especially yesterday when commenting on what happened in Makerfield, is people on the right basically spitting at each other. We should be united behind the things that are best for our country. We shouldn't be attacking each other along these party political lines. This is not partisan. This is about saving our nation. And people need to rise above these divisions and stop being so petty and tribal, and actually do what it takes in order to ensure that we don't have another left-wing government, and in order to ensure that we don't have sectarian independent candidates winning more seats. And if that means that we have to enter into some kind of pact where parties are willing to stand down candidates in certain areas to increase the chances of a, quote, right-wing candidate winning. I say, quote, right-wing because I don't think these are necessarily all right-wing issues. I don't think that mass migration, for example, should be thought of as a right-wing issue, because that affects all of us. It's a common sense issue. If that's what it takes, that's what we need to do, and we need to be working towards that right now, because this constant sniping between people who are affiliated in different directions on the right is causing damage, and it's going to potentially steal the next general election and hand it over to the left.
Well, yes, and the left used to care about border control, and the left used to believe in cheap energy because it supports industry before they lost the plot, before they went mad. Of course, the modern left have abandoned the working class, and I think Nigel has stepped into that space. More power to him. More power to you, Emma Trimble and Mike Neville. Mike, so brilliant to see you again. Have an excellent weekend with the missus. We'll catch up soon. Mike Neville, of course, retired Scotland Yard Detective Chief Inspector, and the fabulous Emma Trimble. Emma, plans for the weekend?
I have a lot of plans. One of them is going to my friend's 30th birthday party, which starts at 4 and ends at God knows what time, so it's going to be interesting.
All bets are off. What we should do a Zoom with you at like 10 o'clock tonight and hear what you really think.
Dangerous.
There you go. My thanks to the fabulous Emma Trimble. Really enjoyed your company this morning, and you've gone down a storm with our audience. Shocking story unearthed by our executive producer, Dean Spencer, and it's about two things. These homes of multiple occupancy for illegal immigrants are, wait for it, folks, more expensive than migrant hotels. Meanwhile, there is talk now of accommodating asylum seekers in social housing. Here's a voice note on that from a very good friend of the show. This is Perry.
It's the same all over the country. When I took my camper van last year through the Cotswolds, there's all these little signs up saying, Lib Dems, Lib Dems, Lib Dems. You know, and Lib Dems have the, everyone's welcome, all the migrants are welcome, everyone should be allowed to come here. Well, you know, if we had a government that said, well, OK, then we will send and we will build camps all over the Cotswolds. If you say they're welcome, you can have them. We will build camps, we'll let them walk around your little villages, walk around your local shops, where get some, where the migrants can hang around outside your schools, and then see if you want to say, Lib Dems, everyone welcome, migrants welcome. I bet they wouldn't.
Too right. Perry, you've absolutely put your finger on the button. Folks, a big conversation this morning. We'll talk about the fact that HMOs are now more expensive than the migrant hotels. And what about our next Prime Minister? Should we give Andy Burnham a chance? 0344 499 1000. I'm dedicating the rest of this hour to your voice notes and calls. Rory's picking up your calls now. 0344 499 1000. Are you in the mood to give Andy Burnham a chance, or are we done with Labour? Let me know. 7:40. This is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. It is 7:42. Are you in the mood to give Andy Burnham a chance? Richard in Leicester, good morning, Mark. 3 more years of pain for the British population. People will never vote for this kind of government again. Inevitable bad things ahead. No scientific education needed to see that. Richard, thank you. Tom is in Reigate. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, Mark.
Happy Saturday. Now, listen, Tom, what are you... I'm very well. What are you up to on a Saturday morning? You sound busy.
I'm driving an HGV lorry, 70 years of age, mate, working to pay for this poxy government you got in.
It's terrible. And roughly, Tom, if it's not too personal a question, how many hours would you put in a week?
Oh, I can't tell you that, my friend, but I'm 70 years of age.
Lots.
And I work more hours than God sends.
Yeah.
Legally, maximum hours, 6 days a week, every other week.
And the issue you've got, Tom, is that the tax that you pay on your hard work doesn't even touch the sides when it comes to the cost of illegal immigration, net zero and the welfare bill.
If you think Keir Starmer's a problem, me old mate, you wait till that Andy Burnham, Mr. Red gets in, and then especially Ed Miliband, Andy Burnham, and look at that Liberal Democrat, Ed Davey, Mr. Post Office, eh?
I know.
Hey, Mr. Clinton Post Office. Oh, yeah. They're all bent, mate, and I'll tell you what, if they get in and Burnham, we're in terrible... This country's had it, mate. It's virtually on the brink now. So, God help us all. All I've got to say is, God bless Starmer. And I hate the man. I think he's an evil dictator. But he's better than Mr. No-Knowledge Burnham and Ed Miliband, who wants to make the country full of wind farms and trees.
And what worries you about Burnham? Is it because you think he will take the country to the left?
Well, look what he's done. Look what he's done to Manchester. Apart from painting a few buses, congestion charge, ullage charge, discharge. Everything you do, you've got to pay for. Yeah. And pay for what? For all the migrants, mate? I don't think so.
And Tom, you work really hard. You work the maximum hours you can, and it's demanding work, and it's a very high skill level that you have. At the age of 70, at this point, you should have your feet up.
Yeah. If they all have my feet up, my old friend, it'll be when I'm going near Fox up to see God up into the sky. Because I'm going to work till I drop, mate.
And is that out of necessity, Tom?
Yeah, I can't afford to live, mate, because of all the high taxes, all the heating bills, gas bills, water rates, electric, food. We pay £150 just me and my wife for food, mate, a week. And that's basic.
It's just not right, is it, Tom?
No, it's not right. And as I say, I'll tell you what, who's to blame for it, though, and I really liked him at first. Boris Johnson had an 80-seat majority 5 years ago, or whenever it was, before the COVID.
2019,
He blew that, mate, because that man, he could have took this country places and everything. But his wife's green. They started all the green agenda. He could have made this country great again. Big Navy. We should double the size of the army, 500,000. Shouldn't have 60,000. And, keep taxing the money, mate, giving it to all these migrants, give it to the army. Get the army built up and get the country good again.
Tom, I agree with you about Boris Johnson. We had the Boris wave of immigration, which is 2.5 million people. We had the boats, which got worse under Boris Johnson. In my opinion, the COVID overreaction, 3 national lockdowns, which have destroyed the economy and society. And as you mentioned, the green agenda. Tom, you are a legend, and I really, really want you to call me again soon, because what you've told me this morning represents all of the issues facing this country. You're 70 years of age, you're working maximum hours in an HGV, and in fact, you should be relaxing with a nice cup of tea, enjoying the company of your missus, a pint in the evening, and a well-deserved retirement. Instead, Tom tells us he will drive till he drops. That's right, folks. He's going to be driving till he drops. And as I've said to Tom, and he agreed with me, it's just not right. It is just not right. Thank you, Tom. Have a good shift, and we will speak soon. More power to you. Phil is in Cheshire. Morning, Phil.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. Are you in the mood to give Andy Burnham a chance?
I don't know about the mood, but I don't think we have a choice. But I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, and I'll tell you why. And it's probably not why you're thinking. I think that Andy Burnham as Prime Minister, which is very much what we're looking at fairly soon, I think he will be good for the Reform Party and Nigel Farage. And here's my thinking. I'm a semi-retired, because nobody can afford to be fully retired these days, but I'm semi-retired entrepreneur and former business owner. And I firmly believe that competition is good. Now, we all know that the Reform Party and Nigel Farage have got a lot of work to do if he's to become the next elected Prime Minister of this country and for Reform to form the next government. So there is work to do. But quite what that work is very difficult to ascertain at the moment, because Keir Starmer and this Labour government are giving him an easy ride. All he has got to do is not be as crap as Keir Starmer and this government, but that's not going to get you into number 10, in my view. So I think that Andy Burnham is going to be initially he's going to have a longer honeymoon period that Keir Starmer has had. I don't think his fall from grace will be quite as spectacular as Keir Starmer, but I do think that he will fail ultimately as Prime Minister, because I don't think that he will change the way that the Labour government are running this country significant enough to basically be what they think he's going to be. And I think he will be exposed to the charlatan and the self-interested person that he is. So I think that will be it. And that Nigel Farage and the Reform Party will, but for a time, they will have competition and they will have to up their game in order to keep the right of politics interested. Now, what I think he needs to do is I think he's going to have to win back some of those centre-left voters who voted for Andy Burnham in Makerfield, for example, because they saw him as a better option than Keir Starmer. These Reform voters who did precisely that because they wanted Keir Starmer out. So I think he's got work to do in order to bring back those centre-left voters, but also he needs to galvanise some of those right-leaning voters who are currently propping up Restore and the self-interested narcissist that I believe Rupert Lowe to be. And so, therefore, I think that he needs to win some of those people, and I think that is the area that is going to make a difference, and that competition is good for that reason. But I ultimately think that this Labour government is a donkey with a useless jockey, and that when Andy Burnham kicks Keir Starmer off the back of this donkey and gets on and rides it, it will be seen to be just the same old donkey but with a different jockey on it.
Brilliantly put. Phil, my goodness, what a great assessment. And I don't disagree with you. And I think that, as you've suggested, Nigel Farage has his work cut out, but we're probably 2 to 3 years from a general election. And what he's going to do, and yes, he'll get criticised for it, is he's going to have to build a political coalition that involves, as you said, the centre-left voters in Makerfield who are perhaps natural Labour supporters, but who want to stop the boats and who want economic growth. He's going to have to bring in some of the centrist dads who are traditional Tory voters, the One Nation crowd. He's going to have to attract some of Rupert Lowe's patriots, and he's got to consolidate the base. It ain't going to be easy, but if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. Don't forget that I spent half a day with Nigel Farage last week. I've recorded an exclusive interview with the Reform UK leader for the Daily Express newspaper, and I'll give you full details about that on Monday Breakfast here on Talk, which I'm covering for the brilliant Jeremy Kyle. Lots more to come. Should we give Andy Burnham a chance? Your call's next.
We've got some breaking news that has just come in. TalkSport have announced a brand new partnership in a developing story. We hear they've created So Good Lager right in time for football's big summer. Just in, we're hearing that So Good Lager will be pouring pints across all O'Neill's pubs and some of the best sports pubs across the UK. With the big kickoff just around the corner, you can find out where to get your hands on a fresh pint of So Good Lager at talksport.com/lager.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Full switchboard and lots of voice notes coming in. Should we give Andy Burnham a chance? Here's a voice note. It's a quick one from Peter.
Good morning, Mark. Well, we're all waiting to see if Stalin resigns, aren't we? You know, maybe this is another excuse we can all put our flags out and just take a chance on not being prosecuted when Starmer resigns.
Wow.
But it's going to be worth it, isn't it? But then again, right, the elation is going to be short-lived, because if Burnham walks into number 10, it'll be like replacing Stalin with Hitler. Oof. Honestly, the situation will get much worse. Nothing will get better. Everything will get worse.
Thank you, Peter. Now, let me be clear that that's very, very strong language from Peter. This is the home of common sense and free speech. If that is Peter's view, he is entitled to it. I find it very strong language to invoke Hitler, and it's not language I would use, but if that's Peter's view, so be it, because this is talk, and that's what we do, is we talk, and we don't do hurty words. No one gets cancelled. Not on my watch. Danny's in London. Good morning, Danny.
Good morning, Mark. Just thought I'd let you know, my daughter's staying here with her baby. She's changing him. She doesn't listen to talk. I always listen to it. And she was listening to what you said about the 10,000 immigrants being housed in social housing. Now, she's had her name on the waiting list for 12 years. They're paying £1,750 a month rent. How do you think she feels? She's very upset about hearing that. It's not you, but it just brought reality to her. It's terrible.
Well, Danny, did you say it's your sister?
No, my daughter.
Your daughter. So your daughter's been waiting 12 years for
she's
social...
Next to me, yeah. She's next to me. And they pay £1,750 a month rent.
I mean, £1,750 is a huge amount of rent.
Yeah.
And it's money I'm sure she hasn't got. And then how does she feel that people that have entered the country illegally, whose background we have no information about, will go ahead of her in the queue?
Well, she's next to me now. She's upset because she's not really into politics. I've got to be honest.
No.
But when she heard that, she couldn't believe it. She even said, "Mum, did you hear what talkTV was telling about the immigrants?" It's honestly, it is upsetting. But what can you do? They're here, and you'll never get rid of them. We're all in the same boat. We all know what we feel, but it's here. And I think the country is completely. My opinion, I think the country's finished. That's my own opinion.
Well, I do think we're heading in that direction, Danny. Some were saying it's 5 to midnight. You think it's 5 past midnight. What's interesting, though, this has affected your lovely daughter, and my heart goes out to her, waiting 12 years for a council accommodation, a council flat, social housing. £1,750 she's paying to a private landlord, presumably, and it's so unfair.
Yeah. What can we do? We all talk about it. I don't know what we can do. What can we do? There's nothing we can do.
I've got one word for you, Danny. Vote. And I think what's going to happen is that the likes of your lovely daughter, who I've got no doubt is a very, very smart young lady. She's not political, right, Danny? But she's gonna get political, and people are, because when they feel the consequences of these policies, they'll vote for something else. At least we hope they will.
And I honestly, one comment, I think that was an anti-Starmer vote in that Macclesfield. I don't think, that's my opinion. They just wanted to get Starmer out. It's only one loss they've had, isn't it? Everywhere else they've been sweeping up reform.
Well, most definitely. Danny, are you able to tell us your daughter's name?
Chloe.
Lovely Chloe. Chloe, we wish you well, and I know I speak on behalf of our viewers and listeners to say that I hope things get easier for you and that you really do deserve to have a comfortable place that you can call home, that you're not paying a small fortune for. That's why we pay our taxes. It's why we can work hard so that the future of this country, people like Chloe, have an opportunity and have some help from the state, which is what it's there for. It's not there for the rest of the world. Thank you, Danny, and God bless you, Chloe. A brand new listener to Talk. I think she'll stay, especially now that Dave the engineer's on board. Let's have a call from John in Sutton. Good morning, Big John.
Good morning, Mark. Top of the morning to you, mate.
You too, lovely man. Well, it's hard to follow that, isn't it? What do you make of that? Danny and his daughter, Chloe?
Mate, well, I've been paying 990 quid a month. I'm a single bloke. I've got a little tiny studio flat. And the council then I've got absolutely no chance of getting any social housing.
You pay effectively. You're basically paying £1,000 a month for a studio.
Yeah, and that's not.
Jesus.
That's not the dearest one.
I mean, that would be a mortgage. That's a mortgage payment. That £1,000 a month.
I can't save up enough to get a deposit for a mortgage. So it's taking most of my money, to be honest with you.
Now, John,
I just think it's disgusting.
It's so bad. And I know, John, listen, I wish we had longer. I've got maybe just under a minute. I think you had a view on Makerfield result as well.
Yeah, I'm not bothered. I'm a member of Reform UK, very happy about what happened. It was a unique election, Mark. Don't read too much into it. It was an election to elect not just an MP, but a Prime Minister.
And also, you can't beat a big name candidate either. He's a household name, Burnham, isn't he?
Yeah, and he was promising them the world. You know, you're going to be the centre of my world. There's a bit of bribery there, Mark. Don't read too much into it. A lot of people would have put him in thinking, all right, let's see what he can do for a couple of years, 18 months, a couple of years. They'll go back to reform, I promise you.
John, you are the man. Listen, lovely to chat to you as well this morning. Have a lovely weekend, sir. John hasn't got a hope in hell of social housing. £1,000 a month. Meanwhile, illegals get it for nout. Make it make sense. More to come. This is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This
Past 8, top of the morning. Happy Saturday, one and all. Mark Dolan, Talk Breakfast. Lovely to have your company. What are you up to on this rather overcast Saturday morning? Perhaps you're at the tail end of a night shift? You may well be at work. If so, I salute your contribution to the unstoppable powerhouse that is the British economy. Because, yes, this government's policies are horrible. They've killed economic growth. Inflation is back. Unemployment. But the British people will always prevail. So, yeah, you may be at work. Perhaps you are still under the duvet, just thinking about the lovely weekend you're going to have. Perhaps you might be in the garden pruning the roses. Have you had your first brew of the day? Let me know what you're up to. 0344 499 1000. A busy show this morning. Get the kettle on. We've got work to do. And breaking as we come on air, it's our understanding that the Prime Minister is now considering his position. Sir Keir Starmer is speaking to his family, friends and trusted colleagues, not many of those around these days. Will we see the Prime Minister's official resignation in the days or even hours ahead? Well, I'm going to be on air for Talk Breakfast today, tomorrow and Monday, so I may well be broadcasting when he falls on his sword. Meanwhile, the newly elected Labour MP for Makerfield, Andy Burnham, prepares for power. So who will be in his cabinet? What will his policies be on the economy, on net zero, on immigration? Will Andy Burnham stop the boats? Well, his political journey to number 10 appears unstoppable. We'll bring reaction to this extraordinary political earthquake that will likely see a new Prime Minister in post as early as next month. You heard me right. Burnham could well be PM by July. So my question to you this morning is a very simple one. Should we give Andy Burnham a chance? Are you in the mood to give this guy the benefit of the doubt? Or are you done with this entire Labour government? What do you think? What are your feelings? What are your emotions this morning? Should we give Andy Burnham a chance or not? I'll let you decide. 0344 499 1000. The brilliant Rory is taking your calls. What a fantastic colleague he is. Neha is directing our TV output, so you can hear us on the radio. You can watch us on DAB+. You know, you hear us on the radio, DAB+. You can watch us on YouTube. Just head to YouTube, search Talk and Up We Pop. Dean Spencer is our executive producer, lead engineer Dave Rhodes. It's all happening. As the saying goes, let's talk. And that's what I want to ask you this morning. Should we give Andy Burnham a chance? Let's start, if we can, with a couple of voice notes. This is Boz.
Morning, Mark and the breakfast crew. Travelling Boz here. Right, question of the day. Andy Burnham, will he be much better? King of the North is now riding his way down to number 10. Just waiting for Starmer to be picked up by a removal van and taken away. 23 months of Starmer getting away with everything. Scandal after scandal. The thing is with this Burnham character is he's saying what people want to hear. But once he goes in there, unless he gets rid of that cabinet, who are absolutely useless, every single one of them, I don't know if it's going to change for the better. But, yeah, let's wait and see. Give him a bit of time. He could either make the country worse or he could pick it up a bit. But, yeah, the policies are still going to be there. Have a good one.
That is a problem, isn't it? And here is Hev.
Good morning, Mark, my darling. It's Hev from Kent. Andy Burnham, shall we give him a chance? Well, I mean, he's people have already given him a chance by vote for him. So it's not up to us, is it? Well, once he's in the House, it's up to the backbenchers, isn't it? But from what I understand, Al Carnes has already got 81 people to back him up, and I just hope he goes for for the top job, but it seems to me that Andy Burnham just wants the top job for the sake of having the top job, and then he's going to be paid a good old wage for the rest of his life. But I honestly, I don't think he's going to be much good after seeing all back history of all the things that he's said, and it just, how can you trust a guy like that? I just don't get it. How can anybody trust him? I don't.
Hev, thank you for that. Well, I trust Linda Jubilee, who is a Fleet Street legend. She's a communications consultant and former star of Sky News when it was good. Good morning, Linda.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well. Fantastic to have you on the show. We need a journalist of serious calibre here to take a look at what's happening. First of all, what is the mood music in number 10? Is there a chance that the famously stubborn, ruthless and ambitious Keir Starmer falls on his sword?
I would have said that if you try and read his character, there is very little chance that he will fall on his sword. But the mood music in number 10 is a different matter. We can all see that people are trying to persuade him to go, even if Lady Victoria is trying to get him to consider staying. I think, though, that the decision will be made over the weekend, because there's no question that this country cannot endure much more mess and turmoil than we've had to put up with over recent weeks. Let's not forget, it was only 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago maybe, that we lost our Defence Secretary because he felt he wasn't given a workable budget. Within hours, we then lost the junior minister for the armed forces. He went, and temporarily, we were actually without a Defence Secretary or an armed forces minister for most of one day. So that is a very big problem. And then shortly after that, we've got the sight of Royal Marines boarding a Russian ship in the Channel. I mean, these are very, very serious issues. So at the moment, I think whatever happens has to happen at speed, because we simply can't tolerate any more mess from this Labour Party.
Well, it's my view, Linda, that Keir Starmer is a disastrously poor politician. I just don't think he's got great political antenna. I don't think his judgment is there, which is why he's struggled in number 10. But is even he so blind to reality that he might participate in a contest that he can't win?
Look, I think all leaders do this. I can remember Margaret Thatcher saying that she was going to fight on, and she then went the next morning. So you can't blame someone who's the leader of a party for hanging on until the last possible moment. You only have to look across the pond to Joe Biden and Jill Biden, who was the last person to support her husband and tried to keep him in power, to see that this is a very, very familiar pattern. I'm simply saying that the circumstances surrounding all of this are now so grave that we simply have to have some kind of an answer. And what I think will happen is that there will be some consensus, some agreement about there being a new leadership. I think that may well be agreed before the summer recess, so that the summer recess can absorb the shock of it all, so that in September there's a new leader in place as the party and all parties head towards the conference season.
And notwithstanding Starmer's position, do you anticipate, Linda, a contest featuring potentially Wes Streeting and others, or a coronation?
I think it would be in the interest of speed and efficiency to have a coronation, although Sir Keir Starmer has said that he will fight in a contest. And I believe that constitutionally, or certainly within the Labour Party rules, he has the right to put himself forward for a contest. So he may decide to do that. He may decide to think that that is the right course of action.
If he's in the mood to preserve his legacy, probably the right thing to do would be to resign and say, you know, this was out with my control. I've done some great things since I became PM. It's not going to be great for the optics of it if he fights on, is it?
No, but I don't think there is much of a legacy at the moment. I mean, I think that's what his attempts with social media are all about. And I think that some of those are pretty futile because, frankly, I don't think it goes far enough. And most very young people that he is talking about will know how to get round the rules that he's thinking of imposing, which won't happen until next spring. But I think that if he's considering his legacy, what I've heard so far about lifting children out of poverty, about shortening NHS waiting lists, about improving the economy, those are all just words. And mostly they are empty words, because the reality is that those things have not really happened.
Yeah, most definitely. We've got the infamous breakfast clubs, haven't we? And we've got his proud announcement that he didn't participate in the war in Iran. Well, it's our understanding he wanted to support America, and it was Ed Miliband and others who prevented him from doing so. Similarly, he didn't want to lift the two-child benefit cap. He said it was unaffordable. Now it's another example of his great legacy. Make it make sense. What about Andy Burnham? What kind of Prime Minister is he going to be, Linda? Does Andy Burnham know what kind of Prime Minister he's going to be?
Well, I think he does exactly the same thing as Sir Keir Starmer. And that's the problem with modern politicians. They've only got half an eye on policy making, and they've got the other eye on their social media profile and on their on-air profile.
Yeah.
And they're styling their way through situations with a mixture of performative politics and market research. And it simply isn't good enough. We need serious politicians for a serious era. I mean, if you think about it, I think the head of the army was the head of the military, in fact, all of the military, only recently, within the last couple of days, was saying that, you know, we could expect some form of attack from Russia within the next 3 years. And we're like Nero, fiddling around while Rome burns. It's just ridiculous that we should have such a great threat to our nation. We should be concentrating perhaps on the defence of the realm. We saw a couple in the Channel being fired upon from people on board a Russian frigate. We know that Russians have been mapping our undersea cables in the Channel, and we sit around ignoring what are really serious and major issues while the Labour Party fiddle around all the time. And also, I think this is not just the Labour Party. I think it's, as I said earlier in this response, I think it is symptomatic of the modern era. And I think really politicians have got to get serious. All of them.
Is there a chance we're underestimating Andy Burnham? What he's doing is playing a clever political game, posing as a sort of working class hero, a figure on the left, in order to get the top job. He then gets in and does the right thing, invests in the military, boosts the economy by getting rid of red tape, reducing taxes, stopping the boats, diluting net zero. Is there any chance that when he gets into number 10, he'll do the right thing? Or is he in the pocket of the left?
Well, I don't think, and I've spoken to some people about this, not everyone, but I don't think the military are completely confident about his skill set in this moment. I will say that. Now, I was talking to someone last night, a Labour politician, and he was saying that he'd done a great job with the buses in Manchester. That isn't the same thing as confronting the most serious geopolitical threat we have had since the end of the Cold War. Entirely different skills are involved in that, and we shall see when he gets in. But as you have said, when politicians are campaigning, they say one thing, and when they get into power, they do another. That's exactly what we saw from Keir Starmer, who knew, absolutely categorically knew, he had to cut the benefits bill in order to fund our defence investment plan. So he knew he had to cut the benefits. And what did he do? He actually kowtowed to his backbenchers who said, no, that's not good enough. So the problem we've got is exactly what I said. It's campaigning and performative politics, where politicians get in because they say the right thing, but once they're in power, they start to duck and dive.
And that is a worry. Briefly, Linda, is there any hope for my viewers and listeners that, notwithstanding some bad policies that he may adopt, that just by dint of being better at politics, things will improve for the country slightly? Is there any hope of that Burnham, as a smarter politician, can at least be an improvement on Starmer?
I think there is some merit in that line of narrative. I think that Burnham is a much better politician than Keir Starmer, and he could end up being a much better leader, and he is certainly a much better communicator. And all those things go in his favour, but they do not stack up against someone who finds the right policies that tries to get economic momentum going in this country, and certainly dealing with the defence situation and actually stopping the boats instead of coming up with a 3-word marketing slogan, which is going to do the square root of nothing.
Well, I totally agree with you. And it seems that one policy he's passionate about is renationalising utilities. Now, we can have that debate, the pros and cons, but even if that does happen, it will be very costly and any benefits won't feed through for 5 to 10 years. So I don't see how that's the silver bullet. Linda, can we talk about Makerfield and actually Reform UK? Because this has been a year in which they've lost 2 by-elections that they might have hoped to win, Makerfield and Gorton and Denton. Has the halo slipped for Nigel Farage?
I think it looks like, I don't think the halo has slipped exactly, but I think they could easily have peaked. People misunderstand how difficult it is to get a new party going.
Yeah.
There's, apart from the personalities involved, there's all sorts of machinery which has to be installed and maintained to make victory even likely. The fact of the matter is that Reform, specifically in this case, did not have a good enough candidates vetting process when push came to shove. And whilst I think their chap was a likeable man, I think there were many things about his past where he could be unseated and which did affect the voter. Now, that's about Makerfield. Makerfield's a bit of a unique constituency, and in this instance, a unique by-election, should I say. And that's why we paid so much attention to it, because the obvious ramifications were about who was going to lead the country ultimately. But I think where Gorton and Denton's concerned, that to me always looked as though it was going to the Greens because of the demographic makeup of the party. And that's what I mean. Electioneering, campaigning is a very, very tough thing. And it needs a big, well-oiled machine if you are actually going to succeed. And Reform need to remember that. I think, by the way, that Nigel Farage's comments after his loss were actually kind of commendable in that he just shot from the hip. He said it in a very, very straightforward way. You know, I am very sorry. This is a bad result. He didn't try and use a form of word salad that kind of made things look good for himself. I think he was very direct, and I think that said a lot about him. But will that be enough? Will Nigel Farage and his personality be enough?
Well, Linda, your personality is enough. I wish you were running the country, but you're just going to have to remain a Fleet Street legend, communications consultant, and former star of Sky News when it was good. Linda, we'll catch up soon, yeah?
Yep, certainly will.
Have a cracking weekend. Isn't Linda just fantastic? So wise. Just that rare thing these days, a balanced journalist. And she's covered every beat. Politics, business, the royals, you name it. She will return soon. Folks, I've got the most extraordinary scandal coming up, and it's in regard to the BBC, who are literally working against the British national interest. It's a shocker. It's a bombshell story. But playing into the break, here's a lovely voice note from Jane. Now, I'm afraid to say I've had my differences with Carol Vorderman. And the latest thing, she campaigned for a Labour government and then got very, very upset when they turned out to be rubbish. Now she's celebrating Andy Burnham. This woman is a fool. Anyway, here's a voice note reacting to my Carol Vorderman rant. It's Jane.
Mark, that was the best thing I have seen all week. The Carol Vorderman impression has made my day. I am sick and tired of hearing that stupid COW on telly and Instagram. 1 minute she's Labour, next minute she's Green, next minute she's doing leaflets for love not hate or whatever it is. Honest to God, she just needs to go back to the cosmetic counter wherever she got her plastic surgery done and ask for a refund.
What they're ashamed of is the English flag. Scottish flag, fine. Welsh flag, fine. Irish, everything like that's marvellous. But no. We can't be English. And this has been going on for a long, long time.
He would be Prime Minister of the most toxic political brand in the country at the moment, which is Labour. And that is what we will be battling against.
Our Prime Minister is allegedly attacked by another nation and nothing is said.
This is a reminder that Russia regards the United Kingdom as a hostile power.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, Mark, says George in Leicester. I must be the only person listening to Talk that wants Starmer to stay in number 10 for one reason, and that's if he stays, he will be the reason why reform wins in 2029. Reform needs time to get people in place. Please be patient. George, thank you for that. It's hard to be patient with the BBC. According to the Telegraph newspaper, Channel migrants were placed on the Question Time show by pro-migration campaigners. Meanwhile, the soap opera EastEnders ran pro-migrant stories after hiring someone that's called a racial justice influencer. Folks, we are literally paying for propaganda. Let's get reaction from a former BBC star, Sally Jones. Good morning, Sally.
Good morning, Mark. Well, I think it's absolutely outrageous that the BBC should be trying to impose their own pro-migration agenda, as you say, propaganda, by inviting this charity to place two mouthpieces, these two asylum seekers, an Afghani and an Iranian, on Question Time, to have them heavily coached, to give them a statement each to parrot. And the woman who is the CEO of that charity, Jenny Regan, a woman who herself has said that she's entirely in favour of unfettered migration, whether it's legal or illegal, was the person that coached them and was then given the chance herself to ask a question, was specially introduced by Fiona Bruce. It just makes the BBC look so partial, biased. Ordinary people like us sort of live. I live quite close to a migrant hotel. I know a number of people within London and in Warwickshire where I live. We're just astounded that this could happen. It's not that we're anti-migrant, no, but it's just the fact that the BBC is taking it upon itself to do the campaigning for these charities. I mean, it absolutely beggars belief. I mean, these charities take a come one, come all approach to migration. They think it's perfectly all right to have absolutely unfettered migration of whatever sort. Obviously, they're devoted to changing the narrative to make us all think of migration as a really good thing, but that's not what the BBC should be doing. Their role is not to try to change our mind, it's to try to reflect society. And it just casts so much more doubt when the BBC is already in trouble. They've got the Trump court case coming up, they've got all the questions over everything from the Gaza documentary to their long continuing employment of obviously bigoted presenters like Gary Lineker and Emily Maitlis, that suddenly, with this enormous court case hanging over them, which is going to cost them it's going to cost them well into the millions, even if they don't have to pay a penny to Trump in merely legal costs. I'm amazed that they should let their slip show in this way, that they should reveal their sort of left liberal bias that they think of as the only way to think about things, including migration. Well, most of the rest of us beg to differ.
Well, you're right to place what's happened on Question Time in context. You mentioned Donald Trump, and you don't have to be a Donald Trump supporter. Half of my audience love him, half can't stand him. He's not a perfect human being by any stretch, but he was outrageously misrepresented on not just the Newsnight programme but Panorama as well, with very poor edits on his speech on January the 6th, which of course was a highly controversial and politically loaded event. He was misrepresented, which is why he is suing. Nigel Farage misrepresented in the aftermath of the murder of Henry Novak, misquoted as saying we should have white rage. In fact, he said pure cold rage, quite different, with very different implications. And now what we have, Sally, is the perversion of the Question Time format, which is supposed to feature an audience of British people from across the political spectrum. That's not what happened.
And it's certainly not what happens with the audience either. My daughter has appeared on there occasionally, and she's got a sort of free market right-wing view. And anyone who's anything fractionally to the right of centre gets booed to the rafters. There's scarce, I would hardly think they've got a single person who's not either centrist dad or far further to the left in that audience. There is no way that there is impartiality in that. And at the moment, the BBC seems to be absolutely devoted to trying to portray all asylum seekers, whether it's on things like the EastEnders storyline or even on CBBC children's television, as which again they've had their pro-migrant migration campaigners there trying to frame migration as an unalloyedly good thing. They're trying to portray all asylum seekers as tremendously sensitive, sympathetic characters. If they do anything wrong, it's purely because they're vulnerable. Well, that's not the experience of the majority of this country. And I think that the BBC is utterly wrong to be trying to tell us what we know is in many cases factually incorrect.
Well, that's right. And you mentioned your daughter, who is an outstanding journalist, nearly as good as you, Sally, not quite.
I'm afraid I'm well in her shadow now, and I'm quite resigned to it.
Look, she's a really fantastic person and a fantastic journalist, incredibly moderate, by the way, of course, far right according to the BBC, but she's a, you know, incredibly knowledgeable and experienced journalist, and it's amazing how the BBC view anyone that's, you know, just slightly to the right of Tony Blair. And it's a problem, isn't it? Because we're paying for it. That's the issue. If ITV, Sally, want to indulge in social engineering and have woke storylines in their soaps and a woke bias in their current affairs coverage, they're entitled to as private businesses. The BBC is not.
No. They like to envisage anybody, even fractionally to the right of centre, like me or my daughter, or anybody of that sort, as absolute swivel-eyed far-right loons, absolute bigots. And most of us are just ordinary people with the ordinary views that virtually everybody around us holds. This is quite a kind of ivory tower view that the BBC holds. These are metropolitan elites who probably don't live anywhere near the worst of the asylum hotels. And of course, it's easy to have these sort of sanctimonious, holier-than-thou woke views and to go around spouting propaganda if you have no experience of it. Those of us with experience of it feel totally differently about it. And I think that the BBC should really be trying to reflect this as well in a much fairer way, rather than just say, you're a load of bigots.
The BBC have lost the plot. They are working against the British people, against the British national interest, in my opinion. So let's take a look, for example, at EastEnders. Sally, do you remember the good old days when it was about Dirty Den and Ange, and Den's had an affair, and then you've got Ian Beale and he's run out of money, and it was just real storylines. It was the East End of London, a working-class drama. Well, the latest we hear is that this show, which, by the way, for the regular TV, the ratings are tumbling, but they ran pro-migrant stories after hiring a racial justice influencer. Now, this is potentially even more egregious than the Question Time story, because this is the management of political messaging. This is social engineering through a TV drama.
Yes, it's absolutely outrageous. And the fact that their viewers are tumbling, I'm not at all surprised. I can remember when Dirty Den and Angie, and having a really compelling baddie like Dirty Den, made it an absolute must-watch. And it was people's normal lives. It's rather like sometimes The Archers gets a bit woke, you know, living in the country. We all have a laugh at some of the woke storylines that they get in there. No doubt they'll be having a few highly sympathetic, delightful, saintly asylum seekers in there as well. But yes, I mean, any of us who would like to see a straight, fun drama or exciting stuff without the BBC having its thumb in the scales, we're going to be disappointed. And it saddens me because when I was picked to be a news trainee for the BBC, it was about the most thrilling and exciting thing that had happened in my life. I felt astoundingly proud to be going through those doors of Broadcasting House. Nation can speak unto nation, but nation shouldn't be broadcasting propaganda unto nation.
Most definitely. And Sally, you're a very, very experienced journalist. You're a very nice person. You're very empathetic. I think, like me, like the vast majority of my viewers and listeners, you're not going to demonise migrants, people that have come here for different reasons, sometimes legally, sometimes illegally, almost all of them seeking a better life. That's not the issue here, and we can have that national debate about immigration and how to approach it in a complex world. The issue I think we have with the BBC is that they're taking a position, that they are selling open borders, and that's the problem.
I mean, I and most of the people I know have actually gone to help out, taken stuff around for migrant families who were staying at a local hotel. And I'm sure thousands of people who disagree with the BBC's stance don't feel personally, I mean, they feel personally sorry for migrants, but they do object to the BBC taking this extraordinarily partial view, as though there were only one way to think about things. And that's what we disagree with. We don't, as you say, we don't want to demonise migrants at all.
No.
I mean, we would all like a better life. If I were living in some hellhole in Sierra Leone, I'm sure the one thing I would love to do is to come to a decent and still a very equable country like Britain, where people are very fair-minded. And I think that the fact that people come trekking halfway across Europe to come to us shows how much more welcoming and fair-minded we are than many of the European countries they pass through. And yes, it is sad that the BBC, I think, is trying to impose this woke propaganda and impose on everybody's good nature.
Sally, we always love having you on the show, and I already look forward to your next on-air appearance. Thank you for your valuable time. A fascinating conversation. Sally Jones, who speaks with great authority as a former BBC presenter and, I believe, senior producer as well. Thank you, Sally. Have an excellent weekend. Send my best to the brilliant Madeline Grant. So much more to come. Can you believe, by the way, that you are paying 180 quid now, Dave, best part of, for the licence fee, just to be lectured with woke storylines in EastEnders and in Doctor Who? By the way, Doctor Who's gone south. The chief writer, the showrunner, Russell T Davies, he's done. He's gone because no one's watching. People can't stand it. What a shame. Folks, much more to come. Should we give Andy Burnham a chance? Your call's next. This is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. It is 8:37. Dolan's Dispatch on the way at 9 a.m. I'll be dealing with Andy Burnham in no uncertain terms. You'll be looking forward to that. I promise you, you don't want to miss it. Dolan's Dispatch in just 20 minutes' time, but right now I'm delighted to have Ellie's dispatch, because Ellie Hodges is broadcaster and political commentator, fresh from a couple of days in Makerfield. You were covering that by-election and the results. So, first of all, were you surprised by the scale of Andy Burnham's victory?
Yes, I was. I think I knew from the moment I got into Makerfield, and obviously the polls as well before that, that Andy Burnham was definitely going to win. But I did not think it would be by that margin. And I think that Reform as well also knew that Andy Burnham was going to win, but was shocked with by how much.
Do you think, though, there's a danger of over-interpreting this by-election result? Because if I look at it, you've got a celebrity candidate that's a household name. You've got the ability to change an unpopular prime minister. And by-elections are often a protest vote anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And also, you know, Reform's candidate wasn't the best candidate for them. As soon as he was selected, you know, all of that controversy came out about comments that he had made, which did not help because Labour were obviously able to use that to their advantage. And it's also an important point to make that Andy Burnham could use the line that Reform used in the local elections, which was get Starmer out. So people that don't want Keir Starmer in anymore could vote for Andy Burnham.
It was very compelling.
And Andy Burnham be the next Prime Minister.
I mean, probably you and I, if we had a chance of getting Starmer out, I'd be like, who do I vote for?
Exactly. And when I spoke to a few people on the doorsteps, people that were voting for Andy Burnham, I said to them, you know, why are you voting for him? And I got a mix of responses. I got some people that were just very, very passionate and loved Andy Burnham, and, you know, he's a local from the area, he's done so much in Manchester. But then there was also people who just said, I hate Reform, and that's why I'm voting for Andy Burnham. But I think that this by-election showed that the left is actually quite strong in terms of their tactical voting, and we see the right arguing amongst itself at the moment, whilst the left is kind of regrouping.
Well, I think you're so right about that, and the right are going to have to learn to coordinate if we're not going to have left-wing governments for the rest of time.
Yeah, exactly. And I do, obviously, we had the Restore candidate in this election as well. However, I don't think it's fair to say that they split the vote, because even if you put the Reform votes and the Restore votes together, Andy Burnham still would have won. So I don't think that's fair to say. But what I did notice on the doors is Restore did have a presence there. They did. There was people, you know, that had their banners outside of their houses. So I don't think it's fair to say, you know, I'm someone that is quite critical of Restore as well, but I don't think it's fair to say that they're just an online party anymore, because there were people, you know, around Makerfield, you know, I could just see by looking past their houses that were supporting of Restore.
Well, if we can, Dean and Nahar, let's take the Nigel Farage clip. Let me know when it's ready, of Nigel Farage responding to the by-election result, and I thought it was an outstanding response, and I'll tell you why after we've heard it. Take a listen to Nigel Farage.
What really happened here is it was vote Burnham, get Starmer out, which of course was our campaign message leading up to the locals on the 7th of May. So we were slightly hoist with our own petard.
And a little later in that statement, in a very relaxed way, he said, I was hoping for 18,000 votes. We got about 16, and actually, I'm really disappointed.
Yeah.
Now, this is rare from a politician, just honesty and authenticity.
I think that was actually the perfect response, because I think it's clear that this has kind of stunted Reform's momentum a little bit. I think that a lot of campaigners might not feel as compelled to go out on the doorsteps next time there's a by-election. They have lost, you know, I think 3 by-elections in a row now. So I think that was a really good response from Nigel Farage there, and just admitting, you know, I am disappointed. I did think that we would get more, and I think that's perfect. But I'm really interested to see how Reform go forward from this, and how, you know, next time a by-election comes up, because there will be one coming up soon, I imagine, how they campaign, what they change, how they pick their candidate, because I think that this by-election did show some of the weaknesses that they do have, and they need to go away. And even, you know, I tweeted about this, Andy Burnham, love him or hate him, his campaign was fantastic. His campaign was really good.
He didn't mention Labour once. It was all about Andy,
and he was deliberately very, very vague in what he actually wanted. I mean, when I spoke to people, like, we're voting for Andy Burnham because we trust him, and that message of vote Andy, vote hope, that was a really, really strong thing to campaign on, but no one actually really knows what he believes in.
Well, what I'm worried about is it's going to be Starmer 2.0.
Yeah, exactly, and I will be really interested to see, you know, how Andy Burnham changes once he eventually does start a leadership campaign. you know, how he goes about it, because at the moment he's been very kind of the North. That's all he's really been talking about, you know, what he's going to do for the North, what he's done for Manchester. He's now going to have to attract lots more supporters that are from down south, which he hasn't been speaking about at all. And, you know, he says... And also, I found it a bit ridiculous how, throughout the campaign, Andy Burnham and lots of people from Labour were talking about how Makerfield was so deprived and it was so bad. I thought it was lovely when I went up there.
Yeah, that does not fit the narrative at all.
Exactly.
And in fact, there's lots of nice houses with nice cars in front of them, social housing, people have got good lives there, so it's probably not the best example. Well, what do you think, folks? Should we give Andy Burnham a chance? Gareth is in Derbyshire. Good morning, Gareth. You're live with Ellie Hodges.
Good morning. Nice to speak to you. So can I put some background and perspective on this?
Yeah.
I live in the north of England. I live in Derbyshire.
Yeah.
And now, through my lifetime, in terms of projects and infrastructure improvements, the last ones I can remember were in the 70s and 80s. I think we had a road improvement, the A38, in the 70s, and Thatcher brought a road improvement in her time. It's the A50 that goes sort of from the M1 to Stoke-on-Trent across South Derbyshire. Now, successive governments, Labour and Conservative, have promised things in the north, but they haven't delivered anything. You know, they promised that we were going to have HS2.
Yes.
From Birmingham to Leeds, and that 5 prime ministers promised that, and the Conservatives scrapped it. When Cameron was in, he delivered nothing other than austerity and hoodies. And apparently George Osborne had this idea of northern sort of improvement.
Yeah, northern powerhouse.
Yeah, he did, but he didn't deliver anything. Now, if Andy Burnham stays to his word, anybody living in the north, you know, London's had everything, hasn't it? It's had Crossrail, Elizabeth Line, it's had HS1, it's had the old cities had billions spent on it.
Yeah.
You know, if you go to any city in the north of England, I mean, and, you know, they've put some trams in Nottingham and Manchester and places like that. But, you know, road improvements have just been shelved. I can give you numerous projects in Derbyshire that the chances of getting them done. You know, we wanted some improvements around the A38 north of Derby, and that's been promised for about 20 years, and it's never been done. Ashbourne needs a bypass. These are things that if you're in France, they do them in the space of about 12 months.
Yeah.
They think about it and do it. So if he's true to his word, and he's actually, I mean, Boris Johnson actually did want to do things like this. He brought this levelling up fund, and we've seen some town centre improvements in Ashbourne and Heanor, and that was Boris Johnson.
But then COVID came along and derailed the whole thing, didn't it?
But he had some inspirational ideas, and he got the right idea. And I think HS2 in the north would still be there if the Conservatives, they didn't ditch him, but they did, because they didn't like him for whatever reason. But so what I'd say, and I've never voted Labour in my life, but if he actually can do something on the back of what he's saying, then he would be popular. You know, a lot of people would vote for him, because we haven't seen anything in north of England. And so you've got to be guarded on this. I think it's about time that in the provinces of England, we actually had some improvement, you know, to all sorts of services, road services, town centre services, schools, hospitals, etc.
Gareth, I'm so glad that you've called the show, because you're really right to identify the historic failure to invest in the north of England, which is one of the most potential rich parts of the country. Let's not forget it was the northwest that was the epicentre of the Industrial Revolution. And we've neglected the north for decades. And I'm really glad that you've raised that point. And potentially the so-called King of the North, if he becomes Prime Minister, will boost the north and therefore grow the economy in that area, improve the infrastructure. And if Ellie Hodges he does, then he'll be successful.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. I think that Andy Burnham could be very successful, and when I spoke to people on the doorsteps that were Andy Burnham supporters, they were very happy with the work that he has done as Mayor of Manchester. So I don't doubt that he can do some good things, but the problem with him is that no one really knows what he believes in if he was going to go on to become Prime Minister. No one knows what he thinks about, I don't know, China or about, you know, these kinds of issues.
We don't know what he thinks about net zero. We don't know whether he's going to stop the boats.
Exactly, because he deliberately keeps himself very, very vague, so people don't actually really know what he stands for.
And we've had 2 years of that with Starmer, haven't we?
Exactly. All that they know is that, and I'm not trying to say that everyone's like this, but when he's running his whole campaign on Vote Andy, Vote Hope, I think, you know, it's a good campaign slogan, don't get me wrong, but what does that actually mean? You can't, you know, run the country just on hope.
Well, you definitely can't. I'll be dealing with Andy Burnham in no uncertain terms in a special Dolan's Dispatch at 9 a.m. But with us live in the studio, the brilliant political commentator who covered the Makerfield by-election. She was there as it played out, Ellie Hodges. Question to you is a simple one this morning. Should we give Andy Burnham a chance? Your call's next, 8:48, Talk Breakfast.
We've actually put up with half a century of being told that somehow our national flag is a symbol of oppression. Now, I think if Oxfordshire do this, they'll find themselves completely and utterly defied. People will literally just defy this. And you know what? If people have moved to this country and they don't like our flag, I've got a really simple idea. Go back to where you came from.
Do you ever fear about being arrested because of the socks you wear, Nigel Farage?
Well, I do. You want to see the underpants? Oh, dear, no.
There's the thought. Wow.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
8:51, Dolan's Dispatch on the way, live in the studio, the brilliant political commentator and broadcaster Ellie Hodges. And Ellie, let's take a look at the Prime Minister. He's there in number 10, considering his position. It's our understanding he's talking to his family, he's talking to friends and trusted colleagues. Not many of those about these days. What's he going to do? Do you think he could fall on his sword in the next 2 or 3 days?
I think that he said that he will come out and he will fight. I think he will fight a leadership election. I think that he will. But I think these next couple of days will be really interesting with cabinet ministers maybe coming out saying, actually, no, I don't want to support Keir Starmer, because they now, they see that Andy Burnham is now going to be an MP. He's going to put up his leadership bid. They know that there's an alternative now. There's definitely an alternative. Whereas before it was kind of, oh, who's going to be leader? We don't know if Burnham's going to get elected. Now it's a definite. Andy Burnham is an MP. He will want that job of Prime Minister. So it will be really interesting to see how the cabinet and even how backbench MPs react to this. But I think that Keir Starmer might actually fight that leadership campaign because he said that he wants to fight. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens there.
If you had his best interests at heart, if you were, for example, may God forbid, his wife, Lady Victoria. Good morning, darling. Would you like a cup of tea? I'm Keir Starmer. I don't know whether to put sugar in or not, so I'll try to do neither. It's interesting, isn't it? We're hearing she's telling him to fight on. I can't verify that, but that's what press reports are saying. If you were advising Sir Keir as a friend, what would you tell him to do?
Step down now if you want to have any dignity, or else it's going to be even more embarrassing for him than it already is, because he's going to see all of his colleagues, all of people that he might even consider friends, turn against him.
And he needs to own this. He should own this.
He needs to own it. But what will happen is behind closed doors, you already see a bit of this happening at the moment. Andy Burnham and Keir Starmer trying to maybe make a deal for Keir Starmer to step down after the summer so he can have his legacy and he can build, what he wants to step away from number 10, what his legacy will be. But I'm really, really not sure, because the thing is with Keir Starmer, he's actually quite hard to predict because he just flip-flops all the time. But I do think that he will fight this leadership election. He will obviously not win it, but it's going to be extremely embarrassing for him when all of his colleagues turn against him, which is inevitable.
And a protracted contest will absolutely destroy the Labour brand, won't it, as it did for the Tories when they had these public squabbles, because they're going to be on the hustings, going around the country, making speeches. Meanwhile, our viewers and listeners struggling with inflation, layoffs, unemployment, cost of living. So that's the problem, is it will not do their brand any favours if there is a long contest.
Yeah, and Keir Starmer will become even more hated within the actual Labour Party, more than he already is, because all of the momentum is behind Andy Burnham. And I saw this in Makerfield. The campaigners that were out there, they were all very, very excited. And when I spoke to them, they were kind of seeing this as a new, fresh start. And I spoke to someone who's been a Labour member, their whole life, and he's now in his 60s, 70s. And, he was saying we need the Labour Party to change, and Andy Burnham's the man to do it. And that's how a lot of Labour members feel. So all the momentum is behind Andy Burnham. So Keir Starmer needs to do the right thing. He needs to step down if he wants to have any dignity.
Because it was better the way Boris did it. He made that speech in number 10, do you remember? And he said, well, I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen, he said, when the herd moves, it moves.
Yeah, exactly.
And he did own it, didn't he? And you could almost feel a bit of sympathy for him at that point.
Well, yeah, but I don't think that Keir Starmer would do that, because I think that we've seen throughout his whole entire premiership, he can't really own anything. No. And he's bloody-minded, and he's stubborn, and he's ruthless. He's very stubborn, very stubborn. I don't even know if I would describe him as ruthless. I don't even know if he even realises what he's doing half the time.
Before you go, a quick line on Nigel Paul Farage. Are you familiar with Nigel Farage?
Yes.
He's a charismatic figure on the political right.
Yes.
And there's some rumours going around online that he's going to resign as Reform UK leader. He doesn't want to be Prime Minister. Your response?
I think that's absolutely ridiculous.
Fake news?
Because, yeah, I think that's absolutely fake news, because I think that everyone knows that, OK, Reform UK, yes, it is a political party, but it is very, very much based around Nigel Farage, and a lot of Reform supporters only support Reform because of Nigel Farage. So if Nigel Farage were to step down as leader and say he doesn't want to be Prime Minister, I think the whole party would fall apart, quite frankly.
Big Ellie Hodges. We're fans of yours. You're an absolute star. Thank you so much for coming in. Please come back again soon, because audience reaction's massive to what you've had to say this morning. Enjoyed your company and great reporting from Makerfield. See you very soon. This is Talk Breakfast. Dolan's Dispatch on the way. But I'm so excited about the World Cup, and let me assure you, it's coming home. And that will be confirmed by a very good friend of ours, Sam Luckhurst, Manchester United correspondent for The Sun newspaper. Good morning, Samuel.
Good morning, Mark. Thank you for having me on again.
Oh, listen, I mean, I'm still in the afterglow of the Croatia game. Are you?
It was very impressive. The first 15 minutes of that second half are the best I've seen from England at a World Cup, probably in my lifetime.
Wow.
The last time they played that well, you'd have to go back to the Argentina game in 2002, and that was, of course, the last time they beat a top 15 ranked side at a World Cup. So it does bode well, even though they did fall short back in 2002, losing in the quarterfinals to Brazil.
Well, it was a great result, Samuel. It was also, dare I say it, entertaining.
It was certainly in the game overall was very topsy-turvy in the first half. Second half, England looked like they were going to blow Croatia away, and in the end, the scoreline probably flattered Croatia. I suppose the quirk of it is that there are still some dilemmas in that side, some places, some players who really, their positions are quite tenuous. You look at John Stones and Ezri Konsa. I don't think anybody would seriously believe that's the best central defensive combination. Anthony Gordon on the left wing. I don't think he's as good a left winger as Marcus Rashford, and I can see Rashford at some point, maybe not in the next game, but certainly taking Gordon's place there.
Why is John Stones in the squad then, do you think?
Well, he's obviously got immense pedigree. He's one of Tuchel's favourites. He's been remarkably consistent for England at internationals. And sometimes a manager sees something in someone that nobody else can see. But in the case of Stones, he has been a good player, but it is still a contradiction that he barely played for Manchester City last season. Mark Dolan kept him out of the team. Manchester City have released him. He does have that pedigree, but you can make the argument that Harry Maguire was playing consistently and playing well for Manchester United. He's got tournament pedigree as well, but Thomas Tuchel deems him sixth-choice centre-back. So sometimes if your face doesn't fit, it just doesn't fit with the manager. And I could still see Stones keeping his place, but Konsa, I certainly don't think is the right partner for him. Guehi is England's best centre-back, and he was probably their best player at the Euros a couple of years ago.
Well, I'm also supporting Scotland, as we all are, Samuel, and I hope that they can get further than Nicola Sturgeon's motorhome. Unfortunately, they went down a goal 1-0 to Morocco, but fingers crossed they'll make it through this group. What about Ghana on Tuesday? England versus Ghana. Are we gonna win that game?
Well, this is not a particularly vintage Ghana side. They obviously got to the quarterfinals of the World Cup back in 2010. They do have that pedigree, but that was a much more enterprising and entertaining Ghana side. They only had 2 shots on target against Panama the other night, and I had to check actually that Panama are actually higher than Ghana in the rankings, which I don't think many people would have expected. They're a very defensive-minded side.
There you go. Samuel, we'll speak soon. It's coming home.
Some breaking news for you coming out of Liverpool Crown Court.
Loads to talk about, I promise you that. Loads and loads and loads.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the programme. Welcome to the home of common sense.
Yes, it's me again, your genial host, Kevin O'Sullivan.
Top of the morning to you. This is Talk Breakfast. I'm Mark Dolan.
Some breaking news for you coming out of Liverpool Crown Court.
Loads to talk about, I promise you that. Loads and loads and loads.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the programme. Welcome to the home of common sense.
Yes, it's me again, your genial host, Kevin O'Sullivan.
Top of the morning to you. This is Talk Breakfast. I'm Mark Dolan.
Some breaking news for you coming out of Liverpool Crown Court.
Loads to talk about, I promise you that. Loads and loads and loads.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the programme. Welcome to the home of common sense.
Yes, it's me again, your genial host, Kevin O'Sullivan.
Top of the morning to you. This is Talk Breakfast. I'm Mark Dolan.
Some breaking news for you coming out of Liverpool Crown Court.
Loads to talk about, I promise you that. Loads and loads and loads.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the programme. Welcome to the home of common sense.
Yes, it's me again, your genial host, Kevin O'Sullivan.
Top of the morning to you. This is Talk Breakfast. I'm Mark Dolan.
Some breaking news for you coming out of Liverpool.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Two minutes past 9. Top of the morning. Welcome to Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan with you today, tomorrow, and also Monday. I'm in for Jezza as well. And breaking this morning, it's our understanding the Prime Minister is now considering his position. He's speaking to his family, friends and trusted colleagues. Not many of them these days. So will we see the Prime Minister's official resignation in the days or even hours ahead? Meanwhile, the newly elected Labour MP for Makerfield, Andy Burnham, prepares for power. Who's going to be in his cabinet? What will his policies be on the economy, on net zero? And will Burnham stop the boats? Well, his journey to number 10 appears unstoppable and will bring reaction to this extraordinary political earthquake that will likely see a new Prime Minister in post as early as next month. So my question to you this morning is a simple one. Should we give Burnham a chance? My phone number is 03444 99 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Or leave us a voice note, and as the saying goes, let's talk. Now, I'm delighted to say that you can hear us on the radio, DAB+, in-app and online. You can also watch the show. Head to YouTube, search Talk, and up we pop. So much to get through, folks. We love the voice notes, we love the calls, and it is a simple question today. Should we give Burnham a chance? We'll kick off a very busy hour, as always at this time, every Friday, Saturday and Sunday, with Dolan's Dispatch. Personally, I don't take kindly to empty promises. Andy Burnham says he's focused on the people of Makerfield as he becomes their MP, calling his commitment to positive change for the country as the Makerfield test. The reality is that this hack politician, this king of not just the North, but of centrist dads everywhere, this pillar of the progressive left establishment, is not focused on the people of Makerfield. He's focused on Andy Burnham, which is why, as he returns to the House of Commons next week, he won't be poring over emails about dog poo in the local park, or potholes on the local A road, or the community centre which faces closure. No. He won't be representing his constituents. He will be representing himself and his ambitions. Don't forget, he's already had 2 attempts at becoming leader of the Labour Party. He wants to be Prime Minister. That is the goal. And it's all so confusing because this is a guy whose dream it was to rejoin the EU. Now, he doesn't think so. This is a guy who at one point believed that someone with a penis can be a woman. Now he doesn't think that. This is a guy who believes that we shouldn't be in hock to the international bond markets, who lend us money that keep the lights on. Now he thinks we should be in hock to the bond markets. He liked Tony Blair, then he didn't. He liked Gordon Brown, then he didn't. He liked Jeremy Corbyn, then he didn't. He liked Keir Starmer. Now he wants to replace him. This guy's been on more journeys than Phileas Fogg. And all you're really going to get with Prime Minister Andy Burnham is a more polished, more presentable version of Sir Keir Starmer. Folks, you heard it here first. This is lipstick on a pig. Whilst Sir Keir's hair is a noticeably greyer shade, and whilst Andy Burnham has a better line in Suits, it doesn't really matter how you dress it up. The two men, Starmer and Burnham, are remarkably similar. Politically expedient, cynical
if you like. With both men, it's ambition before ideology, career before country. It's having the opinions of the last person that you've spoken to in the room. It's about telling your audience, whoever they are, what they want to hear. Now, Andy Burnham is a better communicator and clearly better at politics, as demonstrated during the cannily pitched Makerfield by-election campaign. It was a good campaign. Of course, the reason why, it made no mention of Labour in its posters. But for me, Starmer and Burnham, right? Starmer and Burnham, they are two cheeks of the same backside. Shallow, preening narcissists, patronising, hand-wringing, pious, fake working class, and both responsible for more flip-flops than a branch of Sports Direct. There will be a Burnham bounce, of course there will, and it will be refreshing to have a Prime Minister that isn't as wooden as the New Forest, that isn't as robotic as a Dalek. But I believe that after his political honeymoon, which will be shorter than Tom Cruise's Levi's 501s, Andy Burnham will be horribly found out and will be demonstrated to be completely out of his depth. Be afraid, be very afraid, as the taxes rise, as the borrowing grows, as the welfare gets further out of control, as inflation and unemployment further spiral. Because Burnhamism, right? Burnhamism isn't just Starmerism with a more handsome face. Ultimately, it boils down to the grim pathology of socialism and the idea that you can tax your way to prosperity and that you can spend your way to equality. It's never worked and it never will, which is why Burnham's fledgling political project is doomed before it starts. Now, I interviewed Nigel Farage exclusively for the Daily Express newspaper. It comes out on Tuesday, and I spent half a day with the man that would be our Prime Minister. And let me give you a sneak preview, because it was a very interesting encounter. Nigel Farage said to me that the Burnham bounce will last 48 hours before the former Greater Manchester Mayor is found out and proven to be out of his depth. Well, I think Nigel Farage is being too generous with 48 hours. There's a good chance the bounce may never start, with Mr Burnham boasting that he will stick to Rachel Reeves's fiscal rules on spending before effectively confessing on Newsnight he didn't know what they were. This is a guy that wanted to look after the waspy women until someone showed him the numbers on a calculator, at which point he said, oh, no, I'm talking about, you know, Tesco meal deals and cut-price tickets to the cinema. Burnham's only hope is a snap election in October before the total emptiness of his political offer is exposed. But a man like Andy Burnham, someone that would eat himself if he was made of chocolate, would likely rather be Prime Minister for 3 years and then lose when it all goes horribly wrong than go to the country now for the hope of a full term. It's about the job title for Andy Burnham, not the country. It's about poetry, not policy. It's hot air. It's just Starmer 2.0. It's all about Andy, not the people of Britain. Now, the great irony is that in order to give the left of the party and the militant trade unions their pound of flesh, because they're the ones that are going to make him leader, he will further damage the economy and hasten our national decline with more taxes, more debt and more growth. So Andy Burnham may be more handsome than Sir Keir Starmer, but his politics are just as ugly. 0344 499 1000, your reaction. Should we give Andy Burnham a chance? Laura Jane is in Hampshire. Good morning, Laura Jane.
Good morning, Mark. I hope you're well and not too riled by all of the stuff. I'm very riled. I mentioned to one of your colleagues that I went up from Hampshire to London and took a coach with 100 other Reform volunteers to canvass, which I found very interesting from lots of points of view. Yeah. But just to answer your question about Burnham, we have no choice. He's on his course now. And as one of the Labour people who were interviewed on the day after the election on Talk, they said, you know, everything he's promised was absolutely great up until 10 p.m. Now it's after 10 p.m. and he's on a different course. And I'm summarising, and that wasn't the exact words. But somebody said, I can't remember who it was that was interviewed on Talk the day after. He pretty much admitted that Starmer had used, Burnham had used this as a stepping stone. Anyway, when I was on the ground, we went round in twos. There was two things I noticed. One, there was a lot of Restore people who were haranguing us, and outside the headquarters there was a van with a man with a megaphone shouting fairly obscene, and I know that we didn't split the vote with that because, you know, the numbers weren't there. But I do know that Reform did go up by nearly 3,000 votes from 2024, and we have to take that as a positive if you're a Reform voter. But having said that, I did find the candidate weak. I hate to use the word wet because he was a really nice guy. Gosh, he was tall and, you know, sort of strong and handsome looking and all the rest. But he was not strong enough in terms of his skills to be able to combat. I mean, Question Time, I just wanted to cry. I never watch Question Time because it's so biased. But I did watch it. I felt as if I was watching it, maybe.
Well, Rob Kenyon is a really, really decent guy and a very accomplished man, but just not a gifted communicator.
Yeah, and you know, it really wasn't his fault. But unfortunately, Burnham had a huge amount. I mean, I saw a lot of Labour. Big wigs, for want of a better word, out on the ground. And a fair amount of MPs were up there, and they were gunning for the vote. And people on the doorstep, when you mentioned, do you realise this is Starmer, this is Burnham on a stepping stone? They just sort of looked at me and said, "Oh no, he's going to help with the new hospital. He's going to help with there was a problem with fly tipping and all this thing."
Yeah.
And I said, this is just not going to happen because he's not going to be there for surgeries on a Saturday. He's going to be at Checkers schmooging his, you know, fellow whatever lefties, and people are going to get a shock. And it's so disappointing that you couldn't explain it and you couldn't get people to understand. And honestly, they were so, I mean, the Makerfield people are a really nice group of people. I didn't have, well, there was one woman who slammed at the door in our face and said, "I'm voting Labour, go away." I think another mistake was there was so many people on the ground from all parties. I think the locals were just fed up. And I think the reason for a lot of people didn't vote because they just were fed up.
And LJ, before you run, just because I'm going to get to Graham and then into the break, really interesting to have your call and the fact that you've got experience on the ground campaigning as a volunteer for Reform. It's not been a vintage couple of months for the Reform project. 2 or 3 by-elections you might like to have won that you didn't. A debate about Nigel's reaction to Henry Novak's murder. All of that to one side. Can Reform still win the next election?
Yeah, I think we've got to really look at our candidates. I think that there's a by-election coming up in Suffolk, and hopefully Dr. David Bull is going to put himself forward there. He's a local in that area, but he obviously has political nous. We really need to look at our candidates, and we've got to pull together on the right. I'm apoplectic about Restore, and you know, I don't want to be too rude on, but I'm apoplectic. It's very, very selfish of him just to think about himself and his quarrel with Nigel Farage. I think we've really got to think through our candidates and look at it carefully, because it's a little bit wishy-washy in terms of who we put forward. So I think we can do it, but there's a lot of work that Nigel and his team have to look at to otherwise I think we're in for a shock.
Laura Jane, I'm so glad that you called the show. A very important conversation there. Laura Jane in Hampshire, who was campaigning as a volunteer for Reform UK, and she says, yes, at the next election, we can win and we can save Britain. Graham is in England's largest county, which is Yorkshire. Good morning, Graham.
Good morning, Mark. Nice to talk to you again.
You too, top man.
What a wonderful monologue that was.
Oh, you're very kind.
I don't know how I'm going to follow you and Laura J.
Are you sure I wasn't too hard on Andy Burnham?
I think you probably were, quite honestly. The point I wanted to make, Mark, was you ask the majority of people, and I've discussed this with my grandchildren and who usually you would expect not to be so interested in politics, but everyone can see the problems that have been created by the policies that we've got at the moment.
Yeah,
it's so easy, and you sit here and you wonder, why didn't somebody think that putting the NI up, not just the percentage but the threshold, why wouldn't you expect that that's going to cost jobs? Anybody could see it. Net to zero. You're not drilling in the North Sea.
Yeah.
You're not fracking. I sat on a government body 30 years ago that showed the only way that we were going to be able to guarantee for a long period of time having fuel independency was to start fracking. And that was back then before the Americans started doing it on a big scale. But you look at those policies. Why should we pay extra to get oil and gas out of the North Sea through Norway? And it's the same that we would get. It's exactly the same.
It makes no sense. And did you know, Graham?
Absolutely none.
And Graham, it actually is a bigger carbon footprint if we import oil and gas. It has a bigger carbon footprint than if we drilled. I mean, it's insanity.
Exactly. And anybody can see it. Now, the question I have is, can Andy Burnham be so dumb that, and a lot of people are suggesting that he is, but can he be so dumb that he can't see that there are few moves that he could make to move backwards, to step backwards on some of these projects? Net zero's one. Certain things on the NI that he could do. He could go part way. He could change the threshold back again and leave the extra percentage. He could dump any talk about Chagos. There are so many things that he could do that would make life better. It is clear to everyone, except probably Lord Hermer and Starmer, that there's two-tier justice.
So briefly, Graham, and apologies, Graham, because I do need to run, but just very briefly, you think that we know what needs to be done and there's a chance that Burnham could do it and be a good Prime Minister, is what you're saying, that there's a chance?
A very small chance. I don't think he'd ever make a good Prime Minister because I don't think he'll roll back enough of the stupid policies to put us back into a secure position as far as the country's concerned as a whole.
Graham, we need to speak at greater length because you talked a lot of sense this morning. Graham thinks I might have been slightly too hard on Andy Burnham, and I think that's a very interesting conversation to have. What do you think, folks? Do we give the guy a chance? This is Talk. Oh, let's have a quick voice note into the break. Here's Nigel on reform.
Nigel from Edinburgh. I find it difficult to understand all these commentators still seeing reform doesn't have a problem. Reform lost this election when Yusuf and Farage turned against Rupert Lowe in March 25. That also is when it lost the general election. Without major surgery, it's impossible. After that, Farage became far too arrogant. That was toned down yesterday after the loss, but frankly, he isn't the person to lead the country. Reform are fatally damaged, and they need radical surgery. And that would start with Yusuf, Dorries and Zahawi for a start.
it's just over a decade ago that Emily Thornberry put out that scornful tweet. Do you remember?
Yeah.
White van man in Rochester with a big Union flag, and you know, oh, how ghastly, how awful. Aren't these people simply frightful? And I'm afraid not all, but many Lib Dems are the same. What they're ashamed of is the English flag. Scottish flag, fine. Welsh flag, fine. Irish, everything like that's marvellous. But no. We can't be English. And this has been going on for a long, long time. Raise the colours. Do you know what? I absolutely love it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. It is 9:23. With me live in the studio, the political editor at The Sun on Sunday, Kate Ferguson. Good morning, Kate.
Good morning.
Another eventful week. What was interesting, many predicted that Andy Burnham would win, but not by that scale.
Yeah, it was a thumping victory. Credit where credit's due. And even I think Nigel Farage has said that Andy Burnham came away with a majority no one predicted. And a majority that we just didn't think it was possible for Labour to get in these kind of Brexity areas.
That's right, and it demonstrates that Andy Burnham has a personal following. Barely a mention of Labour in his campaign, of course, and it was a very effective campaign, wasn't it?
Definitely. So when I went up to Makerfield, you'd see, I mean, there were a few kind of Labour placards, but really, if you went to Burnham HQ, it was all about Burnham. So in the kind of, it's a bit of an odd constituency, really. There's no obvious centre, but in one of the main high streets, one of the first buildings you approach, it's big pictures of Andy, vote Andy, vote Andy, vote Hope. It was very kind of charismatic, personal campaign around him. And of course it had to be, because really the subtext of this election was vote Andy Burnham to kick Keir Starmer out of number 10, which is the big question now, whether or not he does, of course. But that's why it was so based around his own personal vote, his own personal charisma. Yes, because he is personally popular, but also because clearly the Labour brand is so unpopular, and actually you're sending Andy back to Westminster in order to upend that.
Is there a danger of over-interpreting the result of that by-election, given the fact that Andy Burnham is effectively a national celebrity, a household name politician, always hard to compete with that, and also voters had that rare historic opportunity to remove a Prime Minister by voting?
Well, I mean, of course, it was a one-off by-election in that sense. So I suppose if you're Reform, and people are saying and commenting that you are failing to perform well at by-elections, you may say, well, look, this is a one-off. It really was to elect Andy to kick Keir Starmer out. He had a big personal following, and usually in by-elections, none of that comes into play. I do think there's a broader issue for Reform, though. We have had a few by-elections they've failed to win, even though they're doing really well in local elections in these sorts of areas. And Nigel, very popular. There is a question over whether or not Reform are doing everything they can or being successful in building that party apparatus and bringing in new candidates who, yes, are local and maybe outside the political bubble, but still able to withstand the pressure and the scrutiny of getting into politics. And it is a lot of pressure nowadays.
Indeed, and one thing that I think Reform are learning is that it's very difficult in politics to achieve momentum and then keep it.
Yeah, definitely. Look, I think a lot of this for Reform is about bringing people in, preparing them properly. It has to grow into more than Nigel and a few AN others. And to be honest, they've struggled to achieve that. So I think in local elections you can do really well because you're basically voting still for those national figures. I mean, no one knows who their councillors are. You're voting for the national brand. But in by-elections, that's when they've come up really short. And I mean, if I was Nigel, I would be getting my team around me and trying to thrash out a plan to do better. You have to take notice of voters when they're not voting for you.
I think you're right about that, and that was acknowledged by Farage in his statement after the by-election result, putting his hands up and saying, I was expecting about 18,000 votes. We got 15, 16,000 instead. And yes, I'm disappointed.
Yeah.
I think that sort of frank messaging will go down well with the public. And as you said, it's going to probably focus minds at Reform HQ on the job that lies ahead, which is a big one. Kate, what about the Prime Minister? He's holed up in number 10. What are you hearing?
So this weekend, PM is obviously considering his options. Look, publicly, he's always said that he would stand in any leadership contest. He says he won't go quietly, he won't just hand the keys over to Andy Burnham in this coronation that Andy wants. But it's clear that the tide is really turning against him, and part of that is just the scale of Andy's victory. It gives other MPs hope that under him they could keep their seats. So one senior frontbencher told me this is about survival now. They're so fearful of getting smashed by Reform in a lot of their seats that if there's a glimpse that under Andy they might hold on to their seats, Labour MPs are going and they're voting with their feet. This weekend, Keir Starmer in Chequers, I believe, with his wife Vic, mulling over his future. On Friday, he was taking meetings and talking about the leadership campaign he is going to run, but it's clear that over the weekend he will be thinking about whether or not that's viable.
And it's the art of war that you don't begin a battle that you provably cannot win. We can almost definitively say he can't beat Andy Burnham in a leadership face-off, can he?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, look, you can always kind of try and find the glimmer of hope. So some people might say to you that Labour members are a lot more loyal than those horrible, disloyal MPs that just blow with the wind. Maybe some of it depends on if 3 people were running, say Wes did run 2 and it was a 3-way contest. Could Keir kind of slip through the middle on second preferences? Interestingly, Labour leaders are often ended up being selected on second preferences. I think that happened to Ed Miliband. But what's clear is that the wind is in Andy's sails. And it was, I think, even before these votes were counted. But, you know, now with that kind of majority, he's seen as a winner. Now, we don't really know much of what he's about. If he does come to number 10, what's he going to be like as Prime Minister? Are his policies going to stand up to scrutiny? And is that shine going to get taken off him very quickly? Potentially. But right now, Burnham is basking in the glory of his victory, and Labour MPs are desperate for a bit of that star appeal.
Sounds to me like you've got a few column inches to churn out, Kate, and I cannot wait to read them because The Sun on Sunday, #1 for political scoops and Westminster coverage. We'll catch up next week, hopefully.
Yes.
Kate, thank you so much, and it'll be another eventful week. Political editor at The Sun on Sunday, Kate Ferguson. More to come. This is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, it is a story that has sparked outrage following the news that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Harry and Meghan, are coming back to the UK in July with Archie and Lily, their children. It's now been revealed they will be accommodated on royal property. Let's get reaction from someone that knows Prince Harry very well. Harry's biographer, the renowned broadcaster and journalist, Angela Levin. Good morning, Angela.
Good morning.
What an insult. What a slap in the face to the British people that, having negotiated their departure from the royal family, they will be staying in a royal palace when they come to the UK in July.
I am so shocked. I am so angry. I've been stumping up and down with my anger because they've been so rude, both of them, him and Meghan. They've been so rude. They've been so nasty. They've told so many lies. And now they're going to take advantage of as much as they can. And it's just too shocking. It's awful. They've got no behaviour, nothing.
Well, I'm really shocked about it. Now, Angela, they're going to be in the UK. I think the countdown to Invictus is around the 10th of July. And it's my understanding they'll be here for a week. They'll go to Birmingham, won't they, for the countdown? But do we know whether they're going to head to the capital at some point in the visit?
No, they haven't said anything like that. I think maybe because they haven't had what is known as a RAVIC.
Yeah.
That is the rules of royal security, and they haven't actually quite finished that. So he won't know, Harry won't know where he'll be going. But the king has offered a place in anything, Law, sort of as rich and gorgeous as you want. And I think that's awful.
Well, that's right, because we don't know the geography of their trip, their itinerary. It's my understanding, Angela, that they'll be here for about a week. There'll be lots of public appearances, of course, because they love a photo opportunity. But it's not clear where exactly they will travel, though definitely Birmingham and the Midlands. But they will be accommodated on royal property. What do you think William will make of this? Because William with his brother. How will he feel that the king has been so generous?
I think William will be horrified and furious. He won't go anywhere near him, I believe, and he won't let Catherine go anywhere near him. She won't want to go either. If Meghan wants to go up and be friendly, no chance. And he'll keep right out of it. This is the worst thing you can do for a man who is dying of cancer, to go in and make demands and see how much you can get out of it. I do know they're not going to allow the king to have any, or he's not going to have any pictures with the children. Quite right, because otherwise it would be on every picture throughout the country and around the world. And there's things that he won't do. I've read somewhere that he's not going to talk to Harry, he's just going to supply the stuff. So I don't think that will last, because Harry is cunning, and if he can get there at all, he will be getting a lot more than anybody can manage yet.
So, Angela, it's your understanding that whilst the king is being very generous, providing royal accommodation and security personnel, it's not a given that he will meet Harry face to face. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I thought that was rather strange, but I think that's very good. But I think Harry's going to try very, very hard to push away the aides and everything, because he can be extremely nasty about things like that, and find his father. I think Meghan is going to be there, going to be standing with him, or very close to her husband all the time, because she's always doubted on Meghan, and they've got to be very sure that Harry is not behaving badly with his father.
Now, Angela, this countdown to Invictus is a charade. It's a pantomime. It's a non-story. It's a nothing burger. The one-year countdown, Harry could easily jump on his laptop from the Montecito mansion, go on Zoom and say, good luck, everyone, a year to go. So the couple don't need to be in the UK for this one-year countdown. Why are they coming?
Well, I think they want to ask for money because they're saying broke now. And I think that they're going to let the children's faces be shown, and if that's shown with the king there, it's going to make a load of money. And I think it's all that. I don't see there's any loving there. I know it's awful of me saying that, but I know a lot about Harry, and he just wants to, he wants his father to go to the Invictus Games next October. I think it's October.
I think, or I might be, forgive me if I'm wrong, I think it might be July in Birmingham.
27.
Yes, it is July. It's right, because it's Camilla's birthday, her 80th birthday there. And it's
Another clash, by the way, which will upset the royal family.
Yes, exactly. Well, they'll follow for Meghan rather than actually Harry, of course. But I've been told it's the 6th to the 10th of July this year.
Yeah.
But I was going to do other things like Little Soldiers and Well Child. Now, both these things he's done for years now, remotely. So why does he need that now to go by police and people looking after him and go living in glory? So it's just nonsense. And I know that people are trying to kill off the sort of... oh God, what forgot what I want to call it.
Do you mean there are people that want to abolish the monarchy?
No, not the monarchy, but to get rid of the Invictus. They don't want it done because Meghan's asking masses and masses of money for her clothes, for the best hotels they can stay in, and being a huge nuisance. And people call it now the Harry and Meghan partout, and they don't actually do anything that are important for the people there, the people who have been wounded. And they all feel very sorry that everybody's looking at Meghan and Harry and not actually looking after them. So I think there's quite a possibility that it might not come off. I hope not. But Harry's making a big sort of nonsense about it, isn't it? And making it a huge thing. And that's what is extremely upsetting.
Well, I agree. I mean, I think the 1 year countdown to Invictus is a joke. You know, they take us for fools. It's clearly a PR exercise. Of course, we have no evidence that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are costing Invictus a fortune with their personal demands. The couple would deny that. But of course, you have your sources, Angela, and you're entitled to your view on that. There's certainly a concern around Invictus, as you've said, perceived by some as being the Harry and Meghan show. Plus, they're losing sponsors left, right and centre.
Yes, because they don't like them anymore, and they don't like the fact that they're not doing what it's supposed to be, which is to let people who've actually been fighting for the country and who need to sort of build up their energy and their bodies. They don't really do that. Do you remember the last one? Meghan wore a very, very short shorts, and she sort of walked in front of everybody else. And the people who'd taken part in the walk, which is never easy for them because they've been damaged, she thought it was very funny and did that, and they hated it. They didn't want to follow her. They were from the army. They weren't for a young woman in very short shorts.
Well, I know what you mean. And actually, I think that if somebody like Mike Tindall or Mike and Zara Tindall were heading up the Invictus Games, maybe even Sir David Beckham, I personally think they would be more successful than Prince Harry, who I feel is using Invictus to a certain extent for his personal brand. Plus, he makes those speeches at Invictus moaning about the state of the world, effectively criticising the US president, who I know is not everyone's cup of tea, but that's not his job to be political. But that's what Harry's like.
No, that's quite right. And Meghan also gives a speech too, which is awful. I think as well, as you asked me about Meghan coming here, she's going to try and build up as ever. I'm sure she will come with a box which she will give the royal family. And that she thinks, I'm sure, will give the sales a push up.
Oh, yeah, well, that's what happened in Australia with the fake royal tour, wasn't it? Yes. They went there to boost their profile, to create a new market and to make money. They'll do the same in July.
Yes, that's right. I mean, their sort of false trips have actually helped them now to see if they can be more regal again. And so therefore that they can charge everyone and make it really something that he would like to do with William later on. I know that. He said to William, you know, I can do what you need. I will do, let's split it and I'll do one half, you'll do the other. That's true. And I think, for God's sake, Harry, he's not going to get a chance. Now feels he's got more confidence with what he's done in the places and how they've been talked to and the presence they've had, and now they feel much more comfortable in coming here and pretending that they're very important.
Now, Angela, it's quite clear that William will not meet Harry next month. It's my understanding, close sources that know what's going on, that Harry, and I quote, effing hates his brother, detests his brother. Do you think, therefore, it's likely that the king will snub Harry too?
I don't think it can be called snub, but he might not talk to him. And the reason that he might not talk to them is that they haven't actually decided the RAVIC yet. They haven't decided how much protection he will have. And Harry can't then say what his father has said. If you remember, it goes back quite a few times that his father would love to have seen him but couldn't because all this hasn't been done yet, and he doesn't want to be part of that because you can't trust Harry. Like last time, he was talking to his father, and his father said, "I'll speak to you only if you don't tell anybody, or we keep it to me private." He said, "Absolutely." And he went off to the BBC and had an interview where he wasn't very kind. So I think that's going to be watched very careful. I think this is more beautiful rooms than love and hug from the father, because I don't see how he can do that. I don't see how they can, they've had things in their coat, and they can take pictures, and actually I don't think it's worth the risking. Stay away from him.
Angela, let me ask you about Archie and Lily. What do you think Harry and Meghan are hoping for with their visit to the UK? What's the plan with the kids, do you think?
Well, I think the plan is so other people can see what they look like now, like taking off all the drawing there. Say, at last, here are the beautiful children that are ours, and it's lovely. I think for the poor little children, that actually they've not been lots of people that they know and have any way of understanding how you behave. I can't understand why they want to do that. It's awful for them, I mean, Catherine's children are very careful. You can see they're used to, good manners and how to work. I'm not saying that Meghan's children are not nicely dressed and talk very nicely, but they won't be if they meet somebody and say, "This is your grandfather." What does that mean? They've never met one.
Thanks up. Angela, always a thrill to have you on the show, and I do hope you'll join us for full coverage of Harry and Meghan's return to the UK. It's going to be the royal story of the year. We can't do it without you, Angela.
Okay, I'll keep you to that.
My thanks to the brilliant Angela Levin, royal biographer, someone that knows Harry better than he knows himself. So much more to come. 9:45. This is Talk Breakfast.
It's just over a decade ago that Emily Thornberry put out that scornful tweet. Do you remember?
Yeah.
White van man in Rochester with a big Union flag, and you know, oh, how ghastly, how awful. Aren't these people simply frightful? And I'm afraid not all, but many Lib Dems are the same. What they're ashamed of is the English flag. Scottish flag, fine. Welsh flag, fine. Irish, everything like that's marvellous. But no. We can't be English. And this has been going on for a long, long time. Raise the colours. Do you know what? I absolutely love it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
9:48, and it's time for Retro Rewind, in which we select a memorable year of the past and indulge in some nostalgia with Virgin Radio star Steve Denyer. Good morning, Steve-o.
Good morning, Mark. How you doing?
I'm very well indeed. I've been enjoying TFI Friday on YouTube.
We saw you part of the action yesterday. You were kind of down the corridor when it was all going on. Yesterday we had Haircut 100 in, and it's Nick Hayward. I think it's like 44 years since their first album. They've done a follow-up. They took their time, but it's part of TFI Friday Unplugged that went out on Channel 4 last night. Get it on our YouTube page. There's some great guests this week. Jack Whitehall was in. He's very funny.
Great comedian.
Really funny. And he's in this new movie. And we had Dawn O'Porter in as well, as I say, Haircut 100. It's a really good show last night, and loads of people messaged about it. You can see our slot. I think you're in some of it as well.
Yes, I am. I mean, I always try to muscle in, you know. I'm hoping to catch Chris Evans' eye at some point.
Yes.
Whenever I get near him, security move me on.
Would you like me to have a word for you?
Yeah, do. Okay. Because honestly, I've been manhandled so many times.
I thought you'd enjoy that.
With the brilliant Chris Evans, it is the same rule as Tom Cruise, which is you're not allowed to look at him.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
No eye contact.
Yeah.
And
you have to bow.
Step away from the... We love Chris. It's a great show, as is The Baby Breakfast, which you host on Virgin Radio.
Yes, early every morning.
You play great music, and actually the year you've chosen, which we won't reveal until the end, is a great year for music.
It is. It really is. This is a really pivotal year, and people have been messaging in saying, I wonder how long it takes Steve to mess this up today. Not going to happen. Not going to do it. Let's start with a massive news event in this year. After 20 years, the Vietnam War came to an end, and it was a very tricky war. We'll get to the finer facts, but this is how they broke the news. Have a look at this.
Evening. I have asked for this radio and television time tonight for the purpose of announcing that we today have concluded an agreement to end the war and bring peace with honor in Vietnam and in Southeast Asia.
It was a very dark time for America, wasn't it, the war in Vietnam?
When you look at the finer facts, I mean, millions of people lost their lives. 20 years this war rumbled on for. And, you know, we were talking about the Falklands War last week, and we were saying it was kind of like the early days' first TV war, but I really think the Vietnam War was the first television war.
Yeah.
Because they had cameras, they had, you know, TV crews there. You could see there's still some heartbreaking photographs of some of the tragic incidents that went on whilst the Vietnam War was going on. But, you know, you look back on it and go, why did that happen, I think?
Well, most definitely, and I think that in many ways, you know, lessons were learned, and at that point, America developed an allergy to foreign wars, even though we've just concluded another one this week. But there you go. There's an old saying, isn't it? History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes.
Yes, exactly that. It's amazing, isn't it? One of the biggest stories here that we didn't really know how it was going to end was Margaret Thatcher in this year. She became the very first female Conservative leader. Have a little look at this, beating Ted Heath.
After Mrs. Thatcher had seen her son off to his accountancy studies, a daughter on her way to law examinations, and a husband away to work in Swindon via the back door, she set off for the House of Commons to begin the process of setting up her office as the new leader of the opposition.
Well, there you are, and she was a different figure
having been elected, you know, she had 4 years to get ready for the big job of Prime Minister.
Yes, exactly, and that is exactly what happened. I think the Conservatives had lost 2 elections before this. There was a huge backlash back in this year, back in this era, saying it shouldn't be a woman and a woman wouldn't be any good at doing the job. And then, of course, you know, we know what happened next. She won, was it 3 elections?
3 landslide election victories, and is one of the most significant figures in British politics over the last 100 years. I mean, many people say, really, Churchill, Thatcher and Blair would be the prominent political figures of the 20th century. And I think, actually, Thatcher probably would be slightly above Blair, just in terms of cultural and political significance.
Yes, exactly that. And if you're around our age, I mean, she was the Prime Minister that I remember for my whole childhood, really, from the age of kind of 3 to 14. It was her, wasn't it? It was Ronald Reagan.
And there was never a dull moment. Do you remember Prime Minister's questions and across the dispatch box? It was an amazing era politically. Well, what else have we got this year?
Well, I picked this year, which I still haven't given away. I haven't given it away.
I can't believe it.
Because on this day, back in this year, are you with me? One of the greatest movies of all time was released. In fact, this is the world's very first summer blockbuster that we ever had, and we all went to the cinema to watch Steven Spielberg's great movie, Jaws. Let's have a look at it. Take a look at this.
Shark. We've got a panic on our hands on the 4th of July.
Well, it was an incredible movie, and it had people, as you say, queuing around the block. It wasn't expected to be a hit, was it? Actually, my understanding, quite a low-budget movie.
Yes, $5 million, apparently. That was the original. They were saying, you know, it should be about $5 million. It cost $10 million in the end. There's documentaries about how bad it was making this movie. The shark, which they named Bruce, kept breaking down. The actors hated each other. They filmed in the ocean, and they had all the weather, you know, to battle against and stuff. But everything about this movie, I think, is perfect. We decided to play that little clip of the music, because the music is such an important part of that film. In fact, the first couple of minutes, you don't have anyone chatting. You just have that music. Do you remember the girl going into the sea?
I do.
And what happened there? And I still think it's one of the greatest ever moments. The head that came out of the boat. Do you remember halfway through? My goodness. It takes me back to being a terrified 10-year-old. I love the fact that my parents thought this was an OK movie for me to watch when I was 5.
I mean, now that's why you turned out the way you did. Yeah,
a horror. Yes.
Where the water would turn red was a big thing. And you mentioned that they had this pretend shark, this sort of animated shark, and it didn't work. It kept breaking down. So Spielberg had to make a decision, which is, OK, we're not going to see the shark. And so all you had was, well, you either had the fin or you just had the suggestion that the shark was there.
Yes.
So you didn't see the animal, which actually made the movie scarier.
But at the time, he was told this is a disaster. People want the shark. You know, why hasn't the shark popped up? All you've seen is the fin or the underwater motion, like you say. But it has gone down. It's become like a template for so many other movies. Don't give away the whole thing straight away. Keep the audience on the, you know, the edge of their seats and make them wait for the action. And this is the master, I think, this movie. It went on to become, I mean, as I say, the first ever summer blockbuster.
Well, yes, and as you say, established a bit of a brand, a bit of a genre. And there's this... In America, in Hollywood history, there's something called the elevator pitch. Do you know that expression?
Go on.
And the elevator pitch is when you get into an elevator with the producer and you basically give them the idea for the movie, and you've got as long as you're in the elevator to sell you. It's called an elevator
60
pitch.
seconds.
So the idea, you basically, if you want to get your movie idea, if you want to get your movie made, it needs to be about, you know, sort of a couple of sentences.
Yeah.
And have them signed. And so there was one such movie, and it was after this massive hit for Spielberg, and it was a movie called Killer Dogs.
Right. Similar theme, right?
Yeah.
Dangerous killer dogs. And they said it's Jaws with paws.
Really?
Yeah.
I love it.
And that is, at that point, the executive's like, where do we sign?
Okay, because of the success of Jaws.
Yeah.
Amazing stuff.
Jaws with paws. And that's how movies used to be pitched in the old days.
Something else that changed everything was this song that was released in this year. They said it would never work. It was 6 minutes long. They were like, 6-minute songs do not get played on the radio. It had no chorus. It was Freddie Mercury coming up with this genius track called Bohemian Rhapsody with a video that changed everything.
Everything, didn't it? The harmonies, the video, of course, the musicianship.
Indeed, indeed. But everybody said it wouldn't work, and it wasn't until, I think, it was seen in Bohemian Rhapsody, the movie, Freddie Mercury takes the record into Kenny Everett. Kenny Everett was on air, and Kenny Everett played it, and then played it again, and again, and everyone was like, well, this is really cool, it's very different. Had no chorus. It took 34 weeks to produce. It included, I think it was 180 different vocal layers on top of one another just to create it. In the movie Bohemian Rhapsody, they kind of summed up the chaos in the studio. But Freddie Mercury had this vision. He was like, nope, we're releasing it. It's going to be my work, and it became one of the greatest moments because he did it as part of the Live Aid set, you know, the Queen, the 25-minute set that they did, which has gone down in history as one of the greatest ever live music events because it was just perfect, wasn't it, on that day, on that Live Aid day?
It was. They stole the show at Live Aid, and it's interesting because at the time, Queen and Elton John had the same manager, John Reid.
That's it.
And Elton John, who obviously, you know, best-selling artist, but also very knowledgeable about the music industry. And he said to John Reid that you are mad releasing that as a single. Yeah. You are, and you know, he's admitted since.
He said career suicide. He said it will be the end of them. And yet you look back and sometimes you just got to take a risk, haven't you?
Bingo.
You got to take a risk. I haven't given away the year. May I reveal it?
I'm disappointed. I'm saddened.
Sorry.
Well, listen. So, well, are you ready to reveal?
Go on. 1975.